back, everyone, to the SPL, a beautiful triple header Thursday that we've got going on for us. My name's Gore, that's Trelly. We're about to be jumping into the Warriors and the Kings, so I'm really excited to see what they end up doing. But the thing, of course, I am most excited for is, of course, the Alienware PCs. Not only like the laptops we're using, the one I use personally as well for work, but also the ones that these players are playing on the Aurora Ryzen R10 desktops. And, of course, Alienware just in general. Massive thanks to them for partnering with us again here in Season 9. If you want to get your hands on some of this gear, play like the pros, or work spreadsheets like me, that one seems a lot more niche as far as things go out there. But if that, for some reason, is your thing, you can go to smitegame.com/alienware and use code, what was it, AWSmite09. I've distracted myself. Of course, you can also go to at Alienware on various socials, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, things like that, to give them a follow, or go to alienwarearena.com to join their global community for giveaways and, of course, a lot more than that. So thanks again to Alienware, and thanks for Trelly for laughing at that, because I said it, as soon as I said it, I knew what a ridiculous thing that has come out of my mouth.
I think there's plenty of people out there that would love to learn to work a spreadsheet.
They're so stoked about
spreadsheets. Yeah,
spreadsheets.
People like spreadsheets.
They're like, man, do I want to be real good at gaming, or do I want to look at numbers?
Do I want to be organized to know exactly where all my numbers are?
For those of you, if you're out there looking for a coach position, let me tell you, spreadsheets, those are really good. If you're looking for a player position, maybe not as necessary overall. We do have to talk about the matchups, though, that are going on. Again, we're watching the Kings and the Warriors take each other on today.
Yep.
And Trelly, even though we've kind of seen it, when you're looking at these two teams, a lot of this conversation is not can they make playoffs. They're both in. It's just where in the standings are they going to be? And when we zoom in on the team that's behind you, when we zoom in on the Kings, we have to talk about the most recent change that they have ended up making to their roster, and that, of course, is now Hardcore filling in where Netroid was prior. And this is a conversation I wanted to have you. I actually gave you like a warning so you could answer this, and I knew the answer anyway.
Yeah.
Is this a trade that you think, grand scheme, like overall, changes so much of the essence of the Kings that we're going to see like a spark up immediately?
I truthfully do not think that ADCs at the moment are that impactful of a role in the early, and that's where the Kings' style of play would change. If for some reason they were getting active in the early, I think at the moment it's kind of let's leave our ADCs alone till like level 20, and then they rotate in. So I don't think it's going to change the way the Kings like to play the early game at all. But Yark is such an impactful player. He likes taking 1v1s. He likes to get aggressive on the map. So I think it will change the way the Kings play the map, of course. But their early game, I can't imagine shifts that much. It's just not that impactful early on.
You do, I mean, at that point, got to talk about like late game mechanics, things like that. Our Hardcore, I mean, look, MVP for a reason, right? He's an insane player. And we'll see maybe if he feels the same way about his new home on the Kings. So go over to J-Mac to talk to him.
Yeah, that's right. I do have Hardcore, the newest member of the Camelot Kings, which is a weird statement to be saying even this late onto the season. Yark, talk to me a little bit about kind of, some of the discussions that were going on around this trade to get you over to the Kings.
I mean, it just was like an opportunity that I came, and I think I was actually playing like really well on the Scarabs, and I think I can probably just do it better here. And we just had like a week of practice, and I really can tell like so many things that are different. So I'm just learning now in the process, and it feels really good.
Yeah, now something that Gore and Shirley kind of brought up was feeling like maybe ADC is kind of the easiest shift that you can make at a point in time like this, maybe not the most impactful shift in that kind of regard out there. Do you kind of echo those same ideas that swapping a hunter for a hunter isn't really that huge of a change between teams?
Yeah, maybe the role is a little stale, but at least myself, I'm a really used vocal guy. I'm always talking. I'm always trying to like move people around, and I think the dynamic will change a little bit.
And kind of talk to me about this one's kind of a little bit of a jokey in there, but talk to me about the fact that this is now the second time that you've replaced Netroid on a team as the hunter. Kind of do you think that plays into the mental of Netroid or yourself there?
I don't know. No, I don't really know. So.
No, it's so. Just gotta throw that one out there. But how do you kind of feel about the Camelot Kings in general? This is a team that typically plays a little bit more towards the late game style of play. They go for a little bit more objective play early on. Do you think that kind of fits your play style a little bit here more, Yarkor?
Yeah, I think they are like a really like disciplined team, and I'm really with that too. I just like to play SMITE the way you have to be played, and I think that they are doing that right now, and I think, yeah, it feels just great to be here.
Yeah, and kind of the main people at least you'll be seeing early on in the game. Obviously, you're going to be now laning with genetics. You're going to be having Captain Twig come over to your lane. How is kind of the team synergy just off the this first kind of initial week of play that you got to have in these first kind of scrims? How's that kind of shaped up for you over there in that duo lane?
I think that he thinks that he's really smart, but yeah, I mean, I'm there, so maybe I'm a little smarter than him. But yeah, I think we're just getting to know each other. We're just trying to just play as a duo, as a whole, and we're just like using the process of things, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, best of luck over to you with now Genetics and the Camelot Kings. I'll let you get back with the team. We'll throw it back over to the desk. Keep going.
Well, I'm excited to see how this one ends up going, and you kind of hear it there. It feels good, right? I think the best quote I got out of that was, thought I was playing pretty well on the Scarabs. Figured I could do that, but better with the Kings. And admittedly, based on what we've seen in the standings, probably going to be true here to see how that works out for the Kings. It's going to be a fun swap. And the team they're going up against, Trelly, has been given an interesting year, right? I mean, a hot hand there in Phase 1. Starts out Phase 2 kind of hot, cools down towards the middle of it. Here in Phase 3, they're right there in the middle, stuck with a lot of the other competitive teams. That, of course, is the Oni Warriors sitting behind me. They're going to be going up again, and we're going to be looking at the people that are most impacted by the change on the Kings. It's going to be Vote and Neil on the other side. Vote, been playing the game for a long time. You have to imagine that he's even had matchups against hardcore as an ADC. Probably not too stressed about that. But this team, especially in the duo lane, feels like they have the chance to maybe find some pressure while the newfound synergy for the Kings is still on its way there.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, every time we get to talk to these Oni Warriors about, hey, you guys have looked really solid. You've looked, kind of questionable. What's going on? How come you're not showing up with the same level of discipline, with the same level of productivity on the map every single time? They're like, we just throw, man. The truth of the matter is, their mindset is, if we lost a game, more often than not, it's because we threw. It wasn't the enemy team played good, it's because we dropped the ball. And I think that's a good problem to have, because that is not contingent on the enemy team misplaying. That's all on you. You can fix that. So the Oni Warriors certainly have a level of confidence, right? They're able to play to the highest of the league. Their highest of highs, they can beat just about anyone. So as long as you have that coming into a matchup, as long as you're able to execute on your plan, stick to a draft, stick to a game plan, and go through something like that, I imagine they're not too shaken up about this. And as you were highlighting, their duo lane in particular, Vote's one that can get aggressive. Not so much as Yark, but is not afraid, to take those dashes in and take those 1v1 fights. So I do expect to see some sparks fly in that duo lane early on. Maybe if these supports of Neil and Genetics hold them back and say, maybe you guys shouldn't be taking those trades, that sort of thing. But I want to see those fights. I want to see those aggressive plays over in the duo lane from either one of these teams.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun to see if maybe the Kings admittedly stick to what we're used to with them, or if this changes some sparks over in the duo lane. We've seen them get aggressive early on in the past as well, so it's not necessarily that far-fetched to think that they could potentially start to get things rolling over on that side of the map. But it is going to be a lot of fun. Again, most of the core is the same, which is why I asked that question. It's like, if you got 4 guys that have running this team, if it was someone in that mid 3v3, I think we're having a much different conversation than someone who's going to sit solo farm for a little while. And then with the mechanics that we've seen hardcore have, join a late game team fight and potentially just slap people around. I guess a lot of that is determined more or less by God choices. And that's what I was going to bring up to you, because not only is the patch changing a lot of things, I think we've seen a little more changes mostly in mid, but Ishtar, we saw the Kernanos, we've definitely seen different and varied hunters overall. Do you think that is still going to be where the priority is for these teams as we jump into picks and bans, that they're going to look towards mid, or are they going to maybe focus on the duo lane?
I would not be surprised, just because of how impactful the mid lane has been as of recent. I think we only have 1 game of data so far on the new patch, so something we predicted a bit in waiting room was these burst style mages are going to be more diverse. It's not just going to be the Vulcan. The Vulcan's still very solid, but, we saw Benny Q on the Agni, that sort of thing. I imagine that will continue. Someone like BMT with a very diverse god pool as well maybe can shine a light, and Yardez as well. I think both of these mid laners could be looked to be prioritized, as well as just show us something new in the phase of picks and bans. But looks like, so far, the Vulcan still going to be taken away. That's something we imagine will be prioritized.
Now, that's something I think is actually interesting, because I was, going to look at it, against the Warriors, things that make sense. The Dodgy is up there. AMC is up there. The Morrigan's up there, but most of those feel a little more meta style. Well, the Morrigan maybe is a little more immune to that. overall. It's not too uncommon. Their most oft first picked has been Yamoja. And so maybe that's going to be somewhere that they can go. No, it's banned away alongside the Cupid, the Dodgy. Cupid was something I was going to ask you about because it feels like that was something Netroid played a lot, and that Vote, as we saw in those highlights, would play a lot. But definitely a big shakeup. But when it comes down to the Vulcan conversation, mainly because that got banned, like the Terra makes sense again because of what we've seen. Vulcan hasn't won a whole lot for the Kings, so if the Warriors were worried about it, real moral that I'm getting at is maybe they shouldn't have been. But it's going to be banned either way. They go for the Amus and Cobb. We haven't seen them yet since the nerfs. So I can ask you, even though we got a little taste of it in set number 1, how you feel about this pick?
I mean, there was huge nerfs, not just to AMC, but to a lot of the items that he likes to build. I mean, this will be the tell, right? Is AMC dead, or is he still very much, alive in the mid lane?
Buzzing?
Is he buzzing? Yeah, good wordplay, and also a good question to ask. I feel like it'll be very noticeable. So we'll have to see exactly where this AMC decides to put their pressure, in that mid lane. But I can't imagine that the AMC is going to be as impactful as he used to be, which, because he was so strong, does not mean he'll be useless. Let's be clear. Going down a bit from the top of the top pick, top ban mid laner does not mean you are useless. So still bring that pressure, but also not going to be the end-all be-all mid laner. The Kings, however, are going to bring that Ishtar in that conversation, as well as the Cernanos. They're just leading with the double hunter composition. You talked about the duo lane a bit and how we might see some hunters prioritized. Looks like the top 3 are all going to be hunters.
Now, although AMC has been seen a lot more in mid, I guess in this case, probably going up against the Cernanos, so it's not going to be an unknown matchup. I feel necessary to ask about this. Ishtar, last week, 23 picks, right?
Yep.
8 wins overall. Did not, as far as margins of success go, pretty low in that regard. What is that, like 30%-ish win rate? So you have to think that highly prioritized for the Kings. Is the number there, that win rate, representative of what she brings to the table? I mean, we just saw some really good games from Netroid on this pick. Do you think we can expect the same from the Kings?
Yeah, I think that the stats do not reflect, in the same way that Vulcan is very highly prioritized as well as not having the same win rate to back it up. I think it goes the same. I think Ishtar just brings a lot to the team fight, brings incredible objective burn, and that's the real reason you're picking a pick like the Ishtar, and that's the reason that since a lot of teams are picking her, sure, the win rate's not going to look great always, but I still think there's a reason that she is getting this highly prioritized, and the Kings like that objective play a lot. The Oni Warriors, though, they're going to be able to grab that Osiris and the Hades. So very tanky, as well as just trying to set up. I think a lot of beads burning here on the side of the Oni Warriors, whereas that tier was getting locked in there for the Camelot Kings. And that's something that we love to see, right? The tier is always going to bring some exciting gameplay. You always got to keep your eyes on variety, so what kind of plays he can be making in those rotations and such. So excited about that one.
I will admit, surprise, double hunter. For the Kings, and the first ban they have in the second phase is the Fafnir. They follow it up immediately with the Athena. They had something else in mind as we see them lock in this Khepri. The other side, the bans Naja, Erlong, Shin by the Warriors, trying to stifle Twig in the jungle. But now you got to look at it. I mean, you've got the Tarragon, Ymir gone, Fafnir, Yamoja, Athena, Khepri. Suddenly, you're starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel if you're Neil Ma here.
I mean, you are, but Neil still has that pocket Bacchus, and I'm always ready for the Neil Ma Bacchus to come through. It's not the greatest pick, but you got the knock-up immunity from the tier, the anti-heal, that sort of thing really does start to add up. I know that Twig recently did a Q&A stream about, the roster changes and was answering some questions, and someone asked him, what's up with the Dodgy gameplay, because it hasn't been hidden, and he said, guys, I'm 28. I can't play. He said, I'm an old man. I can't play these youngin' characters like the Dodgy. So I don't think we're going to see too much of that prioritized anymore for the Kings. He just said blanket statement, I'm old, man. I can't play Dodgy, and that's that. So at least he's released that out to the world. So now we all know no more Dodgy for Twig, or at least not now unless he practices some more. Still has plenty of gods to try and pull out here in the last pick. But it looks like the Oni Warriors are really thinking about this one. I always talk about the possibility of a Bacchus, but there is still a few different picks you can go into that support role. Notably, the Cabrakan, still something that's available. Not going to have the greatest matchup in the tier, but the Sylvanas, something we've seen hovered, not rarely locked in, but something that's been on the topic of conversation for a lot of these supports. is going to be locked in there with the Rama, and Vote loves that Rama pick.
Yeah, the ROM pick has been explosive for him, right? I mean, I actually have to look at it, like 100% win rate. Admittedly, only across 5 games, most of those have been the Warriors that he's picked it up. So very interesting. Sylvanas, though, like you said, someone that has been hovered often,
Yep.
not locked in a whole ton, to the point where, and this is going to be a small throwback, I guess, a few months. But Inbound is the person that comes to my mind when I see Sylvanas locked in. He's not even in the league anymore. So definitely something interesting for Neil as we try to find out what the Kings jungler pick will be. But, you know, when you look at the Sylvanas, you've got the roots. Actually recently got a small buff, right? His active passive, that 1 second cooldown whenever you pick up the seeds, was at level 17. Now that's at level 15 to match the rest of the support level ups. So you have to imagine that feels pretty solid. And with a Lancelot on the other side, and again, a pick that Twig has been phenomenal on the last few times we've seen it. I've got to ask, what does Sylvanas bring to the table against the picks the Kings have that make it worthwhile, or was he just maybe the best of the bad situation that was what was remaining?
I will say Sylvanas was not the best of the bad situation.
Because you did mention the Bacchus.
Yeah, I think there were better options if you were just looking for, okay, we want like the best Guardians in the meta. But
yeah.
I rarely stick to the meta when I think about what these guys want to play. I think comfort over everything. If you're having a good Sylvanas pull day, I'll take the Sylvanas over like Yamoja. You know, if you're just on point, you can make that sort of play. So if that's the call here for the Oni Warriors, right? They want Neil on something that he's going to be able to. Number one, you have incredible wave clear. You're going to get pressure in the lane as long as you're hitting your auto attacks on the minions, right? That's all you really need. And you got some good engage. The issue with Sylvanas will always be the fact that you're either in position or out of position, right? If you're at the front of the fight and your team's going in, you're feeling fine. If they start to leave you, you're like, well, I'm stuck here. You have to be sort of in the fray no matter what. So if the Oni Warriors are looking to get pressure early, I'm looking at Neil Ma. I feel like he's going to be having like an 0-0-12 game or an 0-12 game. It really just depends on where that Sylvanas is positioned and how much pressure the team can go for.
Well, I do think it's worth mentioning again. I talked about the Lancelot. We saw the performance, but 4 wins last week for the Kings. 3 games on Lancelot, 3 wins on Lancelot. So you have to imagine feeling pretty confident about that. You get the Khepri res as well. And Khepri has fallen far from grace, right? I mean, it used to be a top pick, top ban against some of these teams, the Kings being one of them. Suddenly he's like slipping through and coming in what is that, 7th overall. Does that feel, I guess, bad for the Scarabs? Or not the Scarabs, the Warriors over here.
He is a Scarab.
I'm still on last set.
Khepri is a Scarab.
Does it feel bad for that Scarab specifically, knowing what he's playing into on the Warriors?
I just think it's very hard for a Khepri to frontline in a meta like this, especially when you're staring at an AMC and a Rama.
Yeah.
I mean, you can build as much Fizz Prod as you want. When that Stinger hits, you aren't tanky anymore. It's the unfortunate truth of being that Khepri. So Genetics is going to have to watch the positioning. And because he's got 2 ADCs of his own, that's probably the play, right? They've got the prod shred. They've got enough damage to dish it back.
Just trying to create the opening for your team and, of course, use that res appropriately. We'll see if the Kings can do it here, if the Warriors have a surprise for us as we jump down to J-Mac and Mifflin for game number 1.
Yeah, it should be a very exciting matchup between the Warriors and the Camelot Kings. So we get ready to jump on in Sylvanas over for Neil Moss, something we've only seen pulled out, I believe, twice in the league so far, but hasn't found any success in that support role just yet. We'll see if the Oni Warriors can be the team to put the first notch in the win category for that god. And even going with a slightly different start here, Mifflin, going into the Tier 1 helmet after Benevolence, not the usual start that we've been seeing from our supports.
I mean, you get a lot of protections with it. I mean, probably going to be Lotus Crown in that first slot. A little bit of additional power, never hurt anybody in the duo lane, should really boost some of that push potential that Sylvanas has just got inherently from having AoE auto attacks. I don't hate it. We saw it for a little while Sylvanas was meta as well. It was generally just that Lotus Crown in first slot, and, well, it's nearly impossible to kill him early game once he has got that one stacked up for himself. That said, maybe a little bit easier to kill him if you're getting sundered all the time.
No. It'll just be the smalls at least taken for now by Neil Moss. He'll get the XP credit towards those, but it's only going to be the smalls. Ends up beating one of those Sunder Blasts as you mentioned there, so one of the 2 charges on cooldown for Genetics, but I'm sure he's not too worried about that throughout the early game as it is a shell for Neil Ma. Now, with the way that Hades has been building in the Soul Lane, typically going a little bit more damage and kind of acting as that pseudo front line, obviously you want Neil Ma to be very tanky. Does that change up the dynamic of Neil's playstyle where he needs to kind of sit in that back line a little bit more, or does he need to be that extra initiation with Nika and Cubo?
I imagine Neil will, for the most part, be trying to get into the front line. Really wants to get those ultimates onto priority targets. You've got decent ability to initiate just from Nika, but Ban Cross Claw getting a nerf. I believe it's essentially like a 40% shield nerf as opposed to what it was previously, like 0.25% off of each tick. I'm not going to go through the math of Ban Cross Claw. That item is...
It's a novel.
It really is. It's a tome. It really is, but it is like 30 to 40% weaker, guys. That's all you need to know. Smarter men have done the math than me.
Will be Cubo rotating over left to help out with the Scepter, where Captain Twig went to the right to help out, at least on the Totem of Ku. And that seems to have kind of been the tale of the junglers these days. Is, do you want to get that totem pressure? Yes, send them over to dual lane. Do you think that you can fight early against them? Probably not. Go ahead and send over to the right side. And I think maybe Captain Twig realizing on the Lancelot doesn't stand much of a chance up against an Osiris this early on.
No, you're really waiting until about 2 items into your build. Neoma in some trouble. Should be able to disengage. Holds onto the shell, though. Has got a good deal of survivability left. Things look a little bit more dire than they actually are. And with the resustain, plenty of potions in pocket as well, Neoma should get back up to fighting strength. But I imagine that this could be a very volatile lane in the duo. Genetics with a good pool on the DPS that an Ishtar has got at this portion of the game could really make it difficult for Neoma to step up to waves. Sylvanas generally wants to be auto-attacking those archers consistently. Good luck finding those opportunities when Ishtar is already autoing for upwards of 70 damage, right? 64 when you're using that lob shot. And the displacement factor of Genetics, as well as the Sunder threat, right? Sunder, abduct, lob shots. I don't think anybody's dealing with that at this level. Give it a couple more, Neoma and Vote will have some more fight potential.
Yeah, certainly not something I want to fight into. And again, a new look at the dual lane for the Camelot Kings. If you're just now tuning in and going, wait a second, what is Yarkor doing over here? He has made the swap with Netroid over for the Scarabs roster. So Netroid over to the Scarabs. Yark now with the Camelot Kings as their ADC. And kind of talking with that interview, he feels confident with this team. You know, he was talking about, I was performing really well with the Scarabs already. Feel like I could perform just as good, if not better, and on a better team now with the Camelot Kings.
Yeah, just a blanket upgrade for Yarkor, just being able to go up a ton of seeds simply by making a swap here. We'll see whether or not he's able to fit in. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Laning phase, I've got zero concerns for Yarkor. I think he's going to be able to hold his own with the best of them, as he did on the Solar Scarabs. It's more so, how are you going to acclimate to the late game style of the Camelot Kings, who have got a very rigid approach to priority lists on objectives, where they want to path after a team fight, things along those lines. Very Camelot Kings. Maybe not something Yarkor is used to, but I'm thinking with the shot calling of Captain Twig or Big Man Tings getting involved, or even Genetics, it'll be pretty easy for him to follow directions.
And it was even something that he mentioned in the interview where he's a very vocal player, Yarkor is, so being vocal along with other fairly vocal members of this team, as you mentioned, Captain Twig, you have Variety Genetics in the late game. Could be a nice little transition over there for him towards this team. And I even like just some of the fun banter that we're already having between these two players. I asked him, what's it feel like, laning with Genetics? He says, Sam thinks he's a really smart guy, but now I'm over here. We'll see who it is. We'll see who's the smart one of the lane. Cubo Fred pushed against the wall, surrounded by 3. Lord of the Afterlife gets him out, but still being chased down by Captain Twig. And it's Big Man Tings to come up with first blood for the Kings.
Great rotation for Big Man Tings, making sure that blue buff is at least contested, finding first blood as well. Will make up for the slight minion wave that he's lost to his tower. I believe misses out on 3 or 4 minions, but first blood bounty, I think, enough that you're not so concerned about it. I think the mid lane matchup could be very interesting in this match as well. Dardez on the AMC has not only seen maybe some nerfs to his itemization, doesn't seem like Transcendence is nearly as popular as it once was, but also some nerfs to the God. It's no longer, hey, I hit you with Stinger, you're not a tank anymore. It's, hey, I hit you with Stinger, you're crippled still, but it's only 10% pen. It's not nearly as much as it once was. Still pretty sizable, certainly a difference maker, but I don't think we have to be so concerned about Genetics eating a Stinger and saying, hey guys, I'm actually a squish. It turns out it's, no, okay, 10% weaker, still sizable, but I don't think you're just blowing anybody up.
Yeah. The main changes that did come with this patch, less damage on Swarm by a pretty considerable amount, if I'm not mistaken, at the later stage. I think somewhere at 30-40 base damage at max rank. And then also losing a little bit of the cooldown now on that Stinger. As you can see, down to only 210 power with the Swarm. Now, obviously, he still gets his pass with B, so he gets a little bit of extra damage to help out with that. But Stinger now only a 60% retrieval cooldown as opposed to what it was at the 80. So no more every 15 seconds I've got a Stinger as long as I'm picking up. Now we're sitting close to maybe that 30 or so.
Yeah, just all around AMC in a much weaker spot, but still able to put out pressure. Dardes getting the better end of the matchup in mid, generally, until Big Man Tings had picked up that first blood. I'm excited to see how the Oni Warriors decide to play around Dardes. I think, especially once he finishes up stacking up that Transcendence, this AMC will have a good deal of fight potential. But in the direct lane matchup, because Big Man Tings has gone for the Devourer's Gauntlets, poke is just not going to favor Dardes. You need to win the fight off the initial, because if you allow Big Man Tings to back up, he's just going to resustain on wave.
Yeah, you can already see what level of poke is there. Now, luckily for Dardes, does have a Sylvanas next to him, so that's a little bit of early pocket healing to keep him sustained up through some of this early poke. Now maybe a 2v2. No jungler nearby to try and help this one out, so unlikely we'll see Dardes and Neil Ma go for a fight over on this side. Instead, some pressure by Vote over towards the dual lane. Seem to be getting the better end of Yarkor early on, but doesn't seem to be too bad at the very least. Both of them still just working on stacking their Devourer's Gauntlet.
Yeah, Yark just hanging out next to that purple buff, trying to make sure that buff is not invaded. Had he gone to wave first, Vote with the level lead may have been able to find pressure and then push his way in towards the buff. So Yarkor makes the active decision, all right, I'll sacrifice a little bit of my wave farm just to confirm that buff rotation, make sure that there is no invade coming his way. Twig puts out some damage, but you really have not got a whole lot of kill potential up against Neil. Neil has got a whole lot of annoying potential, though.
Wow.
Strip away both of the oracles.
Wow.
That's a pretty big fumble from Twig.
Not a great spot to be in. Maybe 4 of the Kings can punish the tree for stepping too far forward, but that's a few ultimates used already. Neil used his, dash in, and that's enough to confirm the damage. Genetics actually getting credit to that one. The Camelot Kings have put 2 kills on the board. Vision coverage, though, around the Fury is in favor of the Warriors because of the efforts of Neil Ma. It seems that may just be enough to deter the Kings from going for that objective.
Yeah, I mean, with Dardes still alive as well, I mean, sure, you've got the pick on Neil and you've got the 4 stack, but it wasn't exactly a cheap pick. Both your ADCs, or Hunters rather, having to use those ultimates. I don't think the Camelot Kings were exactly in a position where they could just run down the Gold Fury. Once we get to 2 items on both of these Hunters, then it's a little bit easier, especially if Yarkor decides to go down that crit tree. But until then, the DPS not quite there.
Quick ult out from Cuvo, surrounded by 3. Now Genetics will go ahead and take as many offerings away as he can without losing too much of his HP. Instead, he'll now go back to base, so the first trebuchet of the game does go to the Camelot Kings in their dual lane. Stinger off the mark by Dardes, scaring Big Man Tings away. Be a little bit of time before we see that Stinger come back up. A little bit of cooldown in Dardes' kit. I mean, it's not the longest cooldown before we see it.
No, Dardes will have that back up. Likely around the first team fight. I imagine the Camelot Kings are really starting to prime themselves to move in towards these POIs on map, be it Pyromancer in about a minute when it spawns, or Gold Fury whenever they're given the opportunity. I make that call because Genetics has already finished up that Sunder, so the pick potential of the Camelot Kings is incredibly high, especially on Neil Ma. We had seen it, just a root from the Khepri, enough displacement, enough lockdown that the rest of the Camelot Kings could jump on him so easily. Neil is not mobile. I imagine it will likely be Blink in second slot, but maybe it even comes to his mind that Heavenly Sprint would go a long way to help him get out of some of these stickier situations.
Kubo chasing down Captain Twig. Captain Twig will be just fine. Actually dashes through Kubo for gets some decent poke up on the Osiris. Not a lot of sustain to his name, at least in this early section of the game. So for now, the Oni Warriors will back up, continue to get their farm going. But this just feels like it's the perfect mentality for the Kings. I mean, the Camelot Kings are not often a team that are going for the early picks. They're not the ones going for the early fight. So trying to match them on even turf this early on. So far, the Warriors have been doing a decent job of it because gold lead, not very high up for the Camelot Kings. It's only that first blood bounty.
Yeah, Experience in a very similar position as well. Generally, we see the Camelot Kings spool up around this timer on the clock. Good pull. Tings forced to use the beads. Should have the disengage, takes the Stinger away with him as well. Darda's gonna have to wait out that entire cooldown. But taking the beads off of Ting's so massive. It's not as if the Oni Warriors got easy ways to optimize on it though. Cuvo Fred not playing a standard CC jungler. So, I mean, Tether sure can now apply the stun, but good luck staying in range for that long. I think it really comes down to Dardes looking for solo opportunities now, or another rotation from Neomon.
Genetics is going to play puppy guard for Big Man Tings for a little while now. As long as that revive is back up for the Khepri, that's maybe at least one out for Big Man Tings not having those beads. We'll be able to cleanse through. Captain Twig blinks in onto Neil, who is just going for pressure for the Scepter. It seems that one does go in favor of the Camelot King, so Captain Twig will have a little bit of extra damage. And
Watch
Cubo
out.
Fred picked. Lord of the Afterlife gets him a little
Oof.
distance, just enough movement speed to get out of the ult from BMT. Will dash in aggressively. Dart is there, but Captain Twig on the rotation in. Slows down Dardas, closes the
Ooh.
cap on a Cubo, but a quick blink from the Osiris will get him away from the joust.
If I'm Cubo, I'm dead 100 times there, because I'm so certain that Captain Twig is fully engaging on a Dardes. I thought it was, all right, let's get Dardes' beads and get out. The turnaround towards Cubo Fred, the reaction time from Fred to blink it as well. Very, very clean play. Captain Twig nearly comes up massive for his team, but instead comes up empty. And even in just losing that joust, the ultimate from Lancelot, you lose a lot of your team fight potential. That's one of your best team fight tools in jungle engagements, being able to lock down essentially entire corridors with a cripple field. So good, especially against gods like Rom or like the Hades. So I imagine we see the Camelot Kings slow it down, if they possibly could slow it down even more from here, as we wait for some of those cooldowns to come back up.
Dash in from Nika as he takes away the Totem of Ku. And is actually double stacking on this Hades, Book of Thoth and Warlock Staff. The call for the Hades solo. Can be very tanky, be very healthy. Have quite a bit of power to his name as well. Rotation in from both junglers. Captain Twig not going to jump into the lane just yet. In fact, dismounts off the horse, throw it over towards Neil, but not going anywhere from there. Camelot Kings now lost that lead that they had there. That first blood bounty has been completely diminished between these two teams. The Oni Warriors continue to close up that gap.
Yeah, I wonder where a lot of that gold is being closed up. It's got to be Nika over in the soul lane. Two-level lead over Variety very quietly
800
has
gold, too.
happened. Nothing's come Nika's way, so he's been allowed to go for this double stack build as well. Interesting. Must just be been able to bully out that soul laner pretty consistently. Doug, can we get a look at Captain Twig's level priority here? I feel like that HP shield is just so much larger than I'm used to seeing at this level. Yeah, let's put a second point into that third ability. I suppose just making sure that a singular auto attack from either of these hunters on the Oni Warriors is not enough to just knock them off that horse. You get a whole lot of value from the tier 2 of that ability.
Gold Fury started by the Kings. Neilma's here. Has the chance to steal, but not if he's pulled by Genetics. Camelot Kings get the Fury. But can they get out? Neilma finds a double knockup. Captain Twig dashes away, but right into the waiting arms of Cubo Fred. Sickle will get the killing blow. BMT just far enough away
Good pull.
to be fine, but Neil has pulled Genetics back. Genetics gets stopped in place, revives himself. Cubo Fred is so low and will go down to BMT because he gets body blocked by the rest of its team. It's a 2-for-1 trade, but the Camelot Kings got the 1 plus a Gold Fury.
And maybe some more. Variety's got a deep rotation in here. Thinks about the Fearless, takes a little bit too much damage, fully disengages. We'll see whether or not he's able to get out, though. Nika between the towers.
Nika eating a lot of damage. Snipes from both, though, are going to take out Yarkor. BMT has taken down Nika. It's a now 3-for-2, maybe 3, or maybe that 4. Big Man Tings able to grab 1, but now the double hunter onto the Cernanos. Big Man Tings trying to fight back, but doesn't have much fight left.
Twig's
Captain
back.
Twig has come back to the fight to drop 1. But now Vote standing door to door against Captain Twig, Variety, and Genetics, who has returned. And a 3-for-1. There's no chance that Vote makes that here. He'll dash away. Won't be able to die to the tower. It's Captain Twig who picks that one off.
Nice try from Voth there. I thought he'd just dig in his heels and try and take the engagement, but with Genetics and the rotation in, you gotta imagine it's so much easier for Capri to just walk you down in a situation like that. Does make the best of a bad situation, though. Vote able to clear out that wave. Ensures that there is no pressure that the Camelot Kings can put onto his own tower, and doesn't miss out on too much of that farm either. Seems Twig was only gonna put that second point into the mount up. Instead, decides to finish up the second. And now has a pretty nice lead for himself at that. Rotating into that fight, Captain Twig was playing at a small deficit. Now with an advantage on the Lancelot, has got a whole lot of 1v1 potential against just about any of these hunters. And the lockdown to boot. I think this Lancelot's primed to make a splash.
Big Man Tings has been swinging hard this game. Even in that last little 2v1 against Team Hunter, still did a decent bit of damage before he ended up going down. Top of the player damage chart. Pyromancer to the Oni Warriors, as Nika is zoning away Variety to keep him out of there. But a lot of that gold lead that at least the Oni Warriors had in the soul lane to make up for it, and that net worth has kind of been diminished a bit. Variety rotating over, gets about a 500 gold back towards his name, at least to close up that gap against Nika. And that's definitely what the Camelot Kings needed, considering that they had the first blood bounty, they'd had a couple of kills to their name, and were still just barely ahead, if not behind. Definitely good for Variety to catch back up.
Yeah, I wonder what the Camelot Kings have got as far as late game projections, because it's so difficult to say that a double hunter composition won't be in a good position come like 30 minutes in. You've got really strong dive potential on the Camelot Kings. Feels like Variety in particular, Captain Twig, both are going to make it a little bit easier for the Kings to get onto priority targets, so long as you can deal with the initial burst of CC from the Oni Warriors. If Neoma's ultimate and Nika's ultimate are both down, you've essentially got no more peel for the Warriors themselves outside of just raw damage output. Peel with, hey, don't walk up on me, I'll kill you. But the Kings with all this shielding and survivability might be able to turn it around.
Neoma pulled back, ultimate onto 3. Not quite enough to save him out. The ultimate in from Captain Twig was just enough damage to break through the last bit of that shield. Tardis can't even go back and pick up a stinger. Ooh. Loses his beads because the rotation from Variety. Get the Blink Fearless onto the mid laner. Drives on Cuva though as he's rotating around to the right. Will not elect to go in. And instead on the left side of the map now, Genetics going back to the duo helps to strip away the purple buff from both.
Yeah, we're about a minute out from that Fury respawning. Probably why Nika has elected to stick around on this side of the map. Good disengage from the Camelot Kings might make them a bit scarce on the left-hand side. Even Cuvo Fred had dedicated himself to the rotation. Nothing comes of it, have to reset. Don't want to lose too much on map. But Variety haven't hung out in the soul lane. Push one more wave, start his rotation, get to that Oni Fury pretty quickly. I think the Camelot Kings should have an advantage if they force the objective fight immediately. With about a 2,000 gold lead, I don't think they will.
Captain Twig staying around a little too long up against the 2v2.
I don't know about that.
Big man Tings does have beads Aegis, so will be privy if Cuvo Fred does decide to rotate into that lane. But with all the action happening in mid, Captain Twig loses his life, but it's a tier 1 tower for the Camelot Kings dual lane. Fury respawns in 15 seconds. Variety's not in the lane right now, hovering closer towards mid, but now going back over. Neither soul laners have teleport either. It'll be a long walk for the two of them, should a fight around the Fury break out.
It seems Variety thinks that is the case, will allow that minion wave to take out his own tower so that he's in range to defend the Oni Fury. You're about 7 seconds away from Captain Twig rejoining the land of the living. But with that mount, should be able to get to the fight quickly. Camelot Kings need to slow it down.
Sunder hits a few. Oni Fury low. Oni Warriors do get the Fury, but how many will make it out? Neoma not going to be one of those. Taken down by Yarkor. Vote. Quarter HP. Blink from Cuvo once again to get away from yet another ult of the Kings. The Warriors take the Oni Fury, only losing Neoma on the trade.
Kings might be able to go fire here. They know they've got 2 eyes on mid. They found their pick on the Neoma. Instead, pressure on the tier 1 tower. I thought with all that health and resources maintained, the Camelot Kings might go for a bit of a crazy play, but crazy never a descriptor of the Camelot Kings. Methodical maybe, but psychotic certainly not. So instead, it will be the tier 1 trade and the kill on Neil in exchange for the gold Fury. But the Camelot Kings have got to maintain presence here. Double hunter composition from the Oni Warriors means that they are very capable of pulling and burning fire. Just got to scout them out and figure out where Twig is.
Nika goes in. Captain Twig holds out to get away. Snipes in the air from
got off the
Vote.
mount?
He dismounts,
Psycho!
tries to jump over the third
What?
snipe. Twig takes him out. The third snipe to do it. Every opportunity in the world that Captain Twig had to just
He
walk
should just
away.
stay on the horse,
just
man.
walk away.
You are at half HP with the HP shield. That is absolutely ridiculous. The Oni Warriors have now got all the priority on the map. Fire Giant pulled out, and the Kings have to respond.
Cuvo and Nika, though. Nika's in the middle of 3. Will not get a lot of healing. He's going to need some backup from Cuvo. He's going to need some backup from the rest of the Warriors. But the Camelot Kings are just doing the damage right back, too. Neilma finds a double knockup. Yarkor gets revived. Variety goes in and immediately second guesses that decision. Camelot Kings pick off one after losing Captain Twig.
Twig's thinking, just as I wrote it up, I knew Nika would go in on his own and desync his death. 30 seconds on the Hades, and Twig already back on the map. The Camelot Kings have made a good situation out of what was just an awful one. Captain Twig could have just survived there. It would have been a lot better, but still certainly not a back-breaking situation for the Kings now. Maybe even a position where he could pull out this Fire Giant, and the only Warriors be forced to make a similar response as we had seen from the Kings previously. This time with no ultimate on Neilma and Nika not present, no access to teleport, means he's got to walk all the way. Pyromancer seems like a more likely pull. Oni Warriors probably just let this one go.
Pyro will go to the Camelot Kings. 10-6 on the kills, only about 1,500 gold, if even that up, for the Kings 21.5 minutes in. And maybe just that death from Nika has delayed the game a little bit longer, because Oni Warriors surely, at least with the power play for those next few seconds until can respond. Pull onto Variety, but he'll be able to Fearless out. Not a whole lot of follow-up from the Oni Warriors. Stinger was up for Dardes, but I guess elected not to throw that one to lock down Variety.
Yeah, I wonder if Dardes is playing a little bit more, I suppose, composed with his ultimates than he was in patches of past because of the nerf to penetration on Stinger. Again, only 10% now, stripped defense from whoever has been afflicted by it. Means that Variety would still likely be very tanky in that situation, but crippled nonetheless. Maybe he's worried, Dardes that is, that the answer would just be, all right, Variety Lawbringers away, and then my Stinger's on cooldown for the team fight. So wants to hold on to it, make sure they find a guaranteed pick. A pull onto Twig or Big Man Tings, much easier. Even Genetics, you're at least stripping Scarab's Blessing, which is a more valuable trade. Stinger for Khepri Ultimate as opposed to Stinger for Tier Ultimate. Maybe those are the situations that Dardes is waiting for. Spend too much time waiting, though, and opportunities slip by. The Camelot Kings re-established defensive positioning around the Fire Giant, and now they're on the hunt. Genetics on a ward. Oni Warriors know exactly where the Kings are.
Vote. And the Oni Warriors will de-ward what was thrown down there. Kind of sporadic vision across the pit for these two teams. Camelot Kings have just at the bottom end of the Fire Giant pit where they have vision. Oni Warriors have their side of the jungle, kind of in a U formation around those two. Variety goes to the back. Fearless is Neilma. Neilma is gone before he can even hit the ground after. Nika in the middle of 3 gets some good damage, but now has to back away. Variety by himself. Cubo Fred trying to take him down, but it's a double kill for Yarkor. Meanwhile, Vote and Dardes still sitting fairly healthy. Cubo Fred rooted by Big Man Tings. But that's a 2-for-none trade for the Kings.
Massive, massive initiation from Variety there, picking up Neilma and making sure he falls down before he even touches down. Wasn't allowed to cast a single ability or relic in that team fight. The Oni Warriors support was removed cleanly. And the Camelot Kings are able to reset and move themselves back towards that Fire Giant. Again, 20 seconds left on Nika's respawn, and no teleport means that you've got a whole lot of time to play with here.
Cuvo ults out. So he'll be fine. No ult for Captain Twig, though. Used that a little bit earlier on. Fire Giant pulled by the Kings. Vote and Dardes can make a splash, but not going to like to use the ultimate and steal that
Stinger
one away.
whiffed.
Camelot Kings get the Fire Giant, and Dardes loses his beads to the Fearless from Variety right after. All 5 of the Kings, the Fire Giant around their waist, will now move towards the mid lane, push up the wave, and maybe even just go directly to the Fury that has respawned.
Tough situation for Dardes there. If Stinger connects, you maintain beads, and I think that's a trade you're willing to take every single time. Now, you've got a massive target on your back. A Fearless from Variety is a death sentence for this AMC, or even a pluck from Genetics, or a stun from Yarkor could all spell doom. So the Oni Warriors mid laner will likely be playing very safe for the next 130 seconds. Luckily for him, a good chunk of that time will be eaten by the Camelot Kings, clearing out the jungle, resetting, spending that gold, pushing up these minion waves, and then approaching these towers. Probably closer to about 80 seconds left on those beads by the time a team fight actually starts up. But still a significant opportunity nonetheless. Camelot Kings got plenty of towers to collect gold from. Could start on duo side, work their way all the way across the map, fall back to Pyromancer on respawn, or even potentially some split push, as Captain Twig has got a whole lot of damage now. Massive power spike with the Heartseeker finished up. Likely does win that 1v1 up against Cubo Fred, so long as it's an ability-based 1v1. If it sticks around and turns in auto attacks, Twig has got no horse in that race. Camelot Kings 3-stack left side, matched by the Oni Warriors and 2 hovering the jungle. Variety has shown himself on the map, clearing that wave. So the Oni Warriors know, worst case scenario here is that it's only 4 on the left-hand side. But nonetheless, Fire Giant on 4, still not a fight you want to take. And now without your shell as well, maybe you just get back to that Phoenix, boys.
Yeah, not the ideal situation for Neilma there, accidentally tapping the shell button.
Had to tap it twice.
Well,
You can't instant cast shell, can you?
can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you're playing Insta-Cash, you can hit that
Understood.
one. I'm also an Insta-Class player, so I feel the pain. Sometimes trying to hit Blink and you get tapped by like an Odysseus bow proc or a minion stops you and you just blink ult and now you're down a couple of bits there. Cubo Fred, no ult to him. He's being bullied out. Twig, BMT, and Variety have rotated to mid instead to take away the tier 2 tower there. It's just Yark and Genetics by themselves on the left side to deal with the duo lane of the Camelot Kings, now joined by the rest of the map. Tier 2 and left does not stand much of a chance now with BMT rotating over, full minion wave in tower, and the Camelot Kings with a minute and a half left on their Fire Giant.
Yeah, so much time to play with here. The Kings have never been a team to take risks, though. I don't think they'll walk into these Phoenixes haphazardly. Maybe not even go for this tier 2 on the right. Instead, Pyromancer seems to be an easy way to extend their lead, so long as Variety isn't picked out here.
Stun from the tether, but with Captain Twig standing by, and some decent poke back towards Vote. Not going to chase the tier, so Variety will get away with stealing the speed buff away from Cubo Fred. Not going to do too much except just kind of annoy Cubo that he's now down a buff for a couple of minutes, but doesn't seem with their remaining time on the Fire Giant, the Camelot Kings will take that last tier 2 tower instead. Clear up everything in the jungle, go back and spend some of the gold in hand and pick up some of your power spikes.
Yeah, it's about a minute and a half till Fire Giant respawns, so 29 some odd minutes. Very likely that this next Fire Giant that comes up will have the opportunity to become enhanced. Oni Warriors do not have the luxury of allowing the Camelot Kings to take fire and then defend on their base, because a double hunter composition, not exactly the best in those base defense situations. That's generally where you really benefit from having a mage. So it could be a neutral territory fight that dictates this game. Camelot Kings, though, I love when they do this. Every single time when Fire Giant's about to wear off, the best way to control the rotations of the Oni Warriors or whoever your opposition is to generate pressure on map. So even without Fire Giant, in threatening this tier 2, you get eyes on 3 members of the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, Variety by himself able to push those 3 back towards their Phoenix line and remove the final tier 2 of the map for the Oni Warriors. Now with a 9,000 gold lead for the Camelot Kings, Fire Giant set to respawn in about 40 or so seconds, means they've got plenty of time to go back and regroup themselves and allow this trebuchet to just go down to the Oni Warriors. So now if you're the Warriors, all your Phoenixes are up. You don't have to worry about defending against fire minions on any wave. What's the best opportunity, Mifflin, for the Warriors to try and find a pick in this fight to at least kind of bring this game back for themselves?
Beggars can't be choosers, Oni Warriors. They put their hands together and they shake them. They say, big money, Neilma. Give me a pool. Whoever it is, Dardes, slam him with the stinger, all right? We're just going to pray that we've got the DPS to take him out. If it's Variety, unlucky, you know, you might be able to do it regardless. Takes a little while to channel that Lawbringer. If it's anybody else, pretty quick pick. The only thing that could put a damper on that plan is Genetics. A single target pull is very easily removed as an opportunity with a single target revive. Scarab's Blessing can stop that entire combo, but I think it really does just come down to Neilma. A pull through wall or a priority target really could change this game up.
Fire quarter, and look at Variety zoning 3, snipes, not enough from Vote. As the Lawbringer from Variety will get him and reposition, but now Nika is in danger. Dashes over the wall, or under the wall in this case. Let's get back to the rest of the team. Clean Fire Giant from the Camelot Kings, puts it around all 5 yet again, and didn't really cost them all that much, just a blink from Variety and all that.
Yeah, Variety just make sure that even that thin margin, narrow window opportunity of Neilma getting that pull is removed as an opportunity. Just with that blink Fearless, just completely stops the potential aggression of the Oni Warriors. Now with Fire Giant on all 5 once more, and only birds on the side of the Warriors, we gotta evaluate what that base defense begins to look like. And it's not exactly hopeful. I think Neilma might be able to get into that back line, drop Fortifying Shell defensively, Once that shell falls off, utilize that enhanced movement speed to just run down the Camelot Kings, try and apply that Sylvanas ultimate. Something, just anything to burn away some of these beads or dashes from the Camelot Kings so that Nika can find some value with the Pillars of Agony. Otherwise, it's just going to be really difficult for Vote to get involved. For the most part, he's either going to start the fight with his ultimate, try and poke out somebody, or finish it with it and try and finish off a kill. But Dardes in particular, I think, for the most part, is just going to be using Stinger on the first guy who closes gap on him.
Frenzy from the Kings. Phoenix, about a third of its HP taken, and a retreat now from the Kings afterward. You do see a mail proc onto Genetics, probably not the most ideal time to get that item to proc itself, but Captain Twig pushing up the left side is now diverting the attention of a couple of the Oni Warriors back over to the left. Kind of cautious play from the Camelot Kings. Did pop that Frenzy to start the fight, but didn't really get a whole lot of poke onto the bird, and still not going to get very much value from it either.
No, the Oni Warriors are doing a really good job of playing goaltender, but they're going to have one more layer of entropy very soon. Enhanced Minion Wave on the right-hand side, starting to approach the right-hand bird. The Camelot Kings, if they can keep the Oni Warriors here, will win out on PvE, but I'm not sure that it's strong enough to take out the right side on its own.
Wow, young board chunking away at the Phoenix while Variety pushes a couple of players back. Variety will be fine on the tier, can resustain with a minion wave. Unless he just takes the minion wave out, we'll get a nice little bit of healing back. Now the Camelot Kings' advantage is this mid lane has been removed of its only bird. Captain Twig by himself on the right will push up the minion wave and try and force some attention that way, but it doesn't seem that anybody from the Oni Warriors are going to respond to the right side.
No, not just yet. Captain Twig reveals himself. Cuvo Fred, the only one in range, but Variety can stop that rotation on his own. Right side bird falls, but a good pull into Genetics. Might separate.
Will be good. Scares Blessing on himself to cleanse and get out. Variety being slowly chopped by Cuvo Fred, but deed is done for the Camelot Kings. 1 minute left or under on their Fire Giant buff, and 2 Phoenixes removed from the map. The Camelot Kings will take this small victory and head back to base.
I suppose the silver lining for the Oni Warriors is that your most valuable Phoenix is the only one still standing. You have still got potential to defend Fire Giant while keeping these minion waves out of your base, but it is long shot odds, and the Oni Warriors have not drawn their line in the sand, the proverbial line in the sand. They've just allowed the Camelot Kings to slowly smother the base there. I mean, right side bird was a slow burn where essentially Twig gets to walk up for free. Even in mid, it was the Camelot Kings poking and prodding and finally finding the opportunity to just walk in. But I was keeping my eyes on the relics of the Oni Warriors, the ultimates, and just about all of them still available. They allowed the Camelot Kings to take that. You at least need to make it expensive in situations like that. Had the Oni Warriors defended a little bit harder, maybe you get a relic, a beads from Captain Twig or Tings, or maybe the girdle from Genetics, or Frenzy rather, so that it's a little bit more difficult to actually burn the objective. But because the Oni Warriors just roll over and let it happen, the Camelot Kings get to maintain full strength as they wait for the Fire Giant to respawn.
I was just looking at the inventory of Big Man Tings. He had a elixir and a power pot both picked up. I think he's already popped the red potion, now holding on to that elixir for himself. Big Man Tings was already hitting pretty hard before these fights are breaking out. Add a lot more extra power in there with those two. Fire Giant, just a few seconds until that one crashes back down. Camelot Kings slow to rally around towards the objective. Most of the Warriors, or I should say 3 of the 5 Warriors have already found their positions around it. It's Neil, Vote, and Nika. Whereas it's a slow rotation in from Dardes and from Cuvo Fred to get to this fight. Now with Fire Giant coming back, all 5 Camelot Kings here. Double Hunter composition to shred through it. And Cuvo Fred by himself over on the left side.
Yeah, but look at the positioning of the Oni Warriors. This is exactly the same as it was on the previous Fire Giant. Variety can stop this push in. Already misses the opportunity, but finds a double push on carries.
But both of them immediately beats away. It gives Captain Twig some time to get to the back. But Captain Twig
Why?
has lost most of his health. Will go back in, but the ring disappears right at the wrong moment. So Captain Twig doesn't get the revive. Snipes.
Stay on the horse, bud.
Stay there this time, Captain Twig. That one won't take you down. Will dismount just out of range of Vote. But now it's the Oni Warriors who are taking the Fire Giant for themselves. The Sun Swords come out from your core, but not enough damage and not enough CC to stop the Oni Warriors, who have pushed the Kings back and taken enhanced EFG.
Yeah, if Twig just backs up there and plays with his team, Variety had already won them the team fight. Getting beads off both Dardes and Vote is just a perfect situation for the Camelot Kings to slow down the engagement, regroup, re-pull the Fire Giant. But because Captain Twig goes in a little bit early, dives in with that ultimate, maybe a bit too much trust in his own damage output, lose out on what was that, 99% of his HP? I mean, the Camelot Kings just have to fold in a situation like that. The Oni Warriors take away the enhanced Fire Giant. Bird's already on the men. Mid-Phoenix back up, right? Not too far behind it. All the Warriors need to do, get this right Bird back up, and then they can start their siege in earnest. Plenty of time to play with this Fire Giant. Because the game has gone so long, maybe it's more so of an even state than it might appear, having just looked at the stats. Builds starting to find a bit of parity as well. But the Camelot Kings keep up their own pressure. Right side Bird has one more enhancement anyway, make that 2. Barreling down the lane, Variety takes the attention of Nika. Captain Twig lines up against Cuvo Fred in the center of the map, leaving only a 3v3 on that left-hand side. But the Oni Warriors, with enhanced Fire Giant, gotta think this defense will come much easier.
Especially with all 5 having the EFG. Does force the Camelot Kings back, at least on the left side a little bit. Mid lane as well. Not going to go anywhere. Variety still by his lonesome. On the right side, will continue to push up the wave for that final fire wave to start barreling its way through. But with Nika there in a full power build minus the Spectral, it's going to make easy work for Nika to clean that one out. So now we're back to an even better state for the Oni Warriors. I mean, going into this enhanced Fire Giant, they were down 2 Phoenixes. They were down, well, they're still down 15,000 gold. That hasn't really changed. But now they've got the Phoenixes up. It's even less worry for them pushing up towards the next one.
And gold means less and less as the game goes on. We're already fully upgraded starters on the side of the Oni Warriors, starting to approach sixth item for just about everybody. Only Neilma lagging a little bit behind in itemization. Otherwise, Relics still need some upgrades, but plenty of gold on the map to collect so long as they're willing to go through the towers first. Seems the Oni Warriors have got higher aspirations, though. Left side Phoenix exposed, and a 3-man core. Double Hunter and Guardian of the Oni Warriors already on the left-hand side. Gotta keep your eyes on Variety. He's done it once, can he do it twice?
Lawbringer out. Just enough distance to get away. But another good Blink Fearless gets the beads off of Dardes alone this time. Doesn't manage to clip Vote with that one. Variety will go back to base. Sun Sword's out. Get some decent damage onto Neil Ma, but not going to get the full value that Yark was maybe hoping for. Sustain from Fire Giant and the Sylvanas will keep the Oni Warriors intact, though.
Stinger for Dardes gone. Lord of the Afterlife gone for Cuvo Fred as well. So Fred, once he decides to initiate, is just going to be stuck in that back line. Camelot Kings have got potential to defend here, but the weakness of their base defense is the same as the Warriors. No standard mage means you haven't got the most AoE damage. It's more so about poke. Yarkor's got plenty of that.
Sunder flashes onto 3. Decent poke from Vote. Most of that being mitigated by the shield from Genetics. Relics, as far as they're concerned, is still pretty even through. It's only a blink and the Sunder charges from Genetics down. Meanwhile, Beads and Frenzy for Neil Ma. Giving up their efforts on the left side have the Oni Warriors. Instead, they'll take away the mid-tier 2. And now going full retreat. Camelot Kings slowly chasing throughout the jungle. And will now meet up with the Oni Warriors on that right side of the map. But a Pyromancer seems to be the call for the Oni Warriors. The Camelot Kings might not give this one entirely for free. Variety 30 seconds until that blink is back up. But it doesn't seem the chase will continue on. Camelot Kings will give up the chase for the Greater Scorpion instead.
I wonder, if the Kings keep up at least a little bit more chase, maybe they can prevent some backs, but Fire Giant just about a minute away, a little bit under, so perhaps would have been too long of a respawn for the Camelot Kings to feel that it was worth the attempt. But had they delayed some of those backs, could have potentially just backed up to pull the Fire Giant immediately. Oni Warriors, though, are able to reset, as are the Kings. Fire Giant should be coming very, very shortly. And we're right back to a neutral state. Separators being that Dardes still waiting on those beads to come back up. 40 seconds on those. Otherwise, Genetics has got about 20 seconds on his Sunder. If Variety can continue making the magic happen, another push on a Dardes with the next half minute might just remove the B from the match.
Camelot Kings Fire Giant spawning in just a moment. Savage there, pressure across. Neilmon and Cuvo up at the front. They want to pop the bubble away from Neil, but he still maintains it. They're able to heal back the damage that's been dealt to him. Cuvo, Fred acting as the front line on the left side. Neilmon towards the middle, Nika to the right. And with Vote right behind Neil, again, Snipes could do some decent damage to start the fight. Maybe go for a steal. Cuvo's able to juke out some. Variety only finds the bubble from Neil, and that's bad news for Variety. A dive
Good
in, but a
revive.
quick revive from Genetics will make sure that Variety gets back. But Variety's not very healthy. He's going to have to return to base, heal up, and come back to the fight.
A full reset is costly. The Oni Warriors make use of that time. Fire Giant pulled expeditiously, but the Camelot Kings still nearby. Would be a coin toss to hold on to this one, so they do not. Variety already crossing the threshold of his base, has made his way into the jungle. Camelot Kings back on 5-man strength. The Oni Warriors re-sustaining, but waiting on some of those key cooldowns. Frenzy loss for Neilma, no ultimates for Dardes, Cuvo, Fred, and Neilma either. Could be an opportunity yet again for the Camelot Kings to try and reinitiate. I'm keeping my eyes on Variety. Feels like he really is just that guy for the Camelot Kings.
Waiting for his blink. There it is, but
Big whiff.
this is Neil Ma this time around. Cuvo, Fred loses his beads. Sun Swords hit Neil Ma, pulled back in. Neil's living, but only for a moment longer. Yark able to take him down. Cuvo, Fred dunks in, Vote to the sky. Can he find the snipes? Aegis from Yarkor doesn't have the damage
Doesn't
to take
miss.
him down. Vote loses his beads and his Aegis and his life. It's a double kill for Captain Twig. All 5 of the Kings standing. I can't say too strong as Yark has to go back to base.
Man, Yark plays so well with those relics. It is very difficult in that situation to recognize that the damage is coming from Vote. He's in the middle of a team fight, he's shooting his auto attacks, eats the first tick of Rom ultimate, and Yarkor immediately slams Aegis for the second. Vote lands the third, but did not have the damage of the Camelot Kings. Able to come out ahead, 3 for 0, and enhance Fire Giant on all 5. 30 seconds of the nearest respawn, and already with the Phoenixes weakened, all you gotta do is get one of your ADCs into range. The Kings might have the push here.
Still, 20 seconds still Neil's up. 25 for Cuvo and Vote. Right side bird gone. The Kings pushing over towards the mid. Captain
Not
Twig
the
already
Titan?
there with the minions. 10 seconds on Neil, a little bit more for the remaining 2. Variety goes in with the Fearless. Gets the beads away from Dardas. Missed the Fearless after, but Nika
Heals
is
up.
gone and so is the Titan. The Camelot Kings, a little shaky in the middle there, but come out on top for game number 1.
Just one misplay around the Fire Giant extends that game for just about 10 minutes, but the Camelot Kings able to right the ship and close out game 1. Good stuff, man. You needed that performance in the last team fight from Captain Twig. The Lancelot at times wasn't exactly able to hit home, but in that very last engagement certainly does. Find some priority targets. Yarkor clearly has slotted well into this team, applying his damage very well. And, well, as a note to the balance team, kick rocks. Double Hunter is still pretty good.
Yeah, double hunters for both of these teams actually still going through there. The AMC not quite having the ending performance throughout, but we could still see the damage numbers that Dardas was able to output on this god. Maybe not quite able to get that full pick potential that he had once upon a time, but still showing that the hunters are out here. They're still playing pretty well and did well for both these two teams. Camelot Kings take game number 1. Can they close it out? We'll find out right after this.
That's right, the Kings find themselves up 1-0 over the Warriors after a nice lengthy game number
Oh, yeah.
one. Maybe a little bit of a fumble there in the middle as well from the Kings. They end up coming out on top, and of course looking good in the royal purple. But if you want to look good in your favorite team's jersey, then you could go no further than shop.smiteproleague.com or to shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SPL and find your favorite team's jersey. Represent them. There's also t-shirts, other merchandise that you can find there as well. And make sure that you're repping your favorite team. And of course, if you tag either the players or the team accounts or us, we love seeing people out there in those merch. So if you're coming to Worlds, then you're going to want to make sure you have your jerseys for whoever you want to support. And of course, then join me and thanking Skulls Gear for being the merch partner this year and making such fantastic jerseys for you to wear
And we'll
while
sign
we're
them.
out there. Yeah, you'll sign one?
Yeah,
Which
anyway, yeah.
team would you want to sign, or just any of them?
Just any of them. I mean, you bring me a jersey, I'll sign it. And so will the players. Trust me, they'll be happy to. So.
Yeah, they'll be happy to. It's going to be a lot of fun if you're there. If you're not there, get one, wear it at home, and just be part of the wave for your team. Show your support in whatever ways you can. And, of course, look good doing it. There it is. That's the phrase. Speaking of looking good, Trelly's on the desk with me.
What a
And
segue.
so, yeah, see,
Wow.
look, well, you got to nail them
I
sometimes,
got a
right?
bright smile on my face now.
The Kings
Yeah.
take a little while to get there. I think there was a point where you go, guys, you're up 15,000 gold. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just 15,000 gold is a lead that most teams can only wish for, but it seemed effortless for the Kings to get that 15,000 gold. It was winning and putting themselves in a winning position after they got that 15,000 gold. That was the current issue, but of course it was solved. I think, as you said, sort of dropped, but I think their team fight was solid. Variety was on point. I mean, this tier was consistently getting to the back line, able to find Dardes and Votes B, sometimes with the same Fearless. Able to get both carries Bs. That's an engage that you can't even wish for, but Variety was dishing it up. Got to give some props to Genetics as well. The Scare's blessings were on point. I mean, he had some very clutch revives that could have, if not timed properly, could have just lost the Kings the team fight, which is incredible, again, because they were up so much gold at this point in the game. But besides that, I think, just strong engage, and Yarkor was doing his job. He looked real good for his first time playing with this team. I think the Ishtar was chunking as you would expect, but still, Votes looks really scary on this round.
Yeah.
I mean, those snipes have, every time I see him play it, are on point. He was consistently landing them. Found Twig once where probably was able to stay on the horse and just live, but decided to get off. Maybe didn't get called out from his team, or maybe just thought he was out of range. But I still think very deadly. The carries of the Oni Warriors, big damage numbers, 37k from Dardes and 30k from Vote, respectively. Both out damaging the opposition. So despite the fact that the Kings found that early gold lead, still extremely competitive.
Showcase that the AMC still has a lot to offer. I think they're from Dardes, but you had mentioned it, a really, really solid KDA performance from Hardcore. And admittedly, that's what you're asking for, right? You're picking up a hunter. You say, you know what? We've got this guy who's been really, really good with us for 2 years, but we want to win Worlds. We think that this is the change that is going to be beneficial for us. Not only do you need a win, but you need to have a good performance, I think, if you're Yark there. So, real solid for him. Now we'll see whether or not it can continue picks and bans for game number 2. And what kind of changes you make? I mean, the Lancelot looked good, but do you ban it? The Ishtar looked really good. And that's maybe the question I have for you. Is Ishtar worth first picking right now?
That is going to be the question, because I think, the AMC was something the Oni Warriors wanted to grab in that first pick slot. You have to imagine the Camelot Kings weren't too worried about it because they let it through. Will that be an adaptation that's made? It looks like the Kepri is going to be the big change up here, and I think that's smart. This is something that's been taken away from Genetics time and time again, and now Genetics is going to have to go at least 4 deep in the God pool for his support pick, because 3 bans from the Oni Warriors, as well as that Yamoja taken away. And, because the Kepri was let through, they were able to grab his pick early on, but maybe just leave it till last at this point. Let 6 bans come through towards that support. The Oni Warriors, though, still grab that AMC, still have no problems with that one. They're going to lock that one in first.
Genetics and having to pick something outlandish is not really an uncommon thing that we've seen in the past.
Definitely not.
Most of the Kings, a lot of the bans they end up eating, tend to be thrown over towards that support role anyway. So, yeah, like you said, with 4 gone, potentially a 5th at some point from the Warriors if they draft one in the top 3, and then you have to imagine maybe up to 9 total if all 4 bans for some reason end up being support. becomes a lot more of a complex situation. You mentioned the AMC gets locked in first pick here for the Warriors. Something that overall, again, a lot of damage last game. Maybe not exactly the overall end-all be-all for the Warriors to win them the game, but definitely put up a fight. Kernanos locked in alongside the Hades for the Kings, and grabbing a couple of things that were successful for them, and the Warriors grabbing something that was banned out from them last time around with the Fafnir.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that,
Blades of light.
you know, you might be
Smite
questioning the
foes.
fact that the Oni Warriors had an opportunity to grab Dart as the Morgan, and it just has not been picked up, and she took some heavy nerfs, and
Yeah, got smacked hard.
I think we'll be seeing the last of the Morgan for a while, just because her early clear is really what helps her get to that late game portion of the game where you can actually, you know, hard clear the wave, use that movement speed to get to your red buff, make those rotations. Not possible anymore. I think her clear getting shut down really does make her much less of an asset, whereas the AMC can still do those kind of plays. So I think that's why the Oni Warriors are valuing this AMC pick so much as opposed to the Morgan, because of the speed of clear. Did I set you up for something?
Well, is the Morgan an asset or a hindrance?
At the moment, she is a hindrance if she's
There you
picked,
go.
and that's why she is not being grabbed. But, you know, we'll see if she's gone forever or maybe just taking a week off. The Camelot Kings have their option. Are they going to grab Genetics' pick or give him 2 more bans?
I've got good news. She's taking this week off. Well, next week's a holiday, and so she'll get 2 for the price of 1, and then, you know, phase 3 playoffs maybe plays.
You got to
different
imagine she'll
sort
be
of game.
feeling fine after that. Just
Yeah,
that much
nice,
time
refreshed,
off. Yeah.
relaxed, and look at me after a week. I was feeling real good. Although maybe the waiting room this morning was let's call that a warm-up for everybody involved. Naja gets locked in here by the Kings before they can try and ban it away. Last time was 2 jungle shots from the Warriors. And so the Kings getting something comfortable. A couple of runbacks, but also something that Twig is very fond of in the jungle.
I want to see 2 more Guardian bans. There's one. Show me one more. I want to see at least 6 bans towards Genetics. I guess you could count it 7 as they picked Fafnir. So, you know, 5 bans total, 1 from the Kings that Yemoja going through. And then just show me one more Guardian. I think it would really just be the ego boost that Genetics really desperately needed.
Oh, he's cheering right
Yeah,
right now.
You know what? He said one more. You saw him. He wants it. I don't even know what would it be at this point. What other Guardians are you taking away with Kabrakan, Ymir, Kepri gone? Those are my go-tos. And it looks like just because they could. There's no way they were worried about Ares, man. They just wanted to take it away because they could.
I mean, I don't know. Ares can be a little bit of a stinker when you're like an AMC. You got an Ishtar, you got a Fafnir. Like he could cause a lot of disruption over there.
Oh, he's a stinker, all right.
Yeah, so I'm not very fond of the Ares there, Charlie.
No, I just, you know, we've seen him pick time and time again. And sometimes.
Oh man, how did we forget Horus?
Well, he's not a
How
Guardian.
did they forget
That
Horus?
doesn't count. You fools. You fell for his trap card. They wanted the Ares gone, and now they can just go for the Horus here. So that's going to be some excellent CC. They have a lot of single target CC, but also with the Hades, they're covering their team fight as well. Clearly, the Camelot Kings are feeling the pressure here from the 5 Guardian bans that the Oni Warriors have dished out.
Everybody else on the Genetics is like, well, guys, I still got Horus. So this isn't even a problem for us. Everybody else on the team is absolutely loving it because they're like, wait, we can pick whatever we want. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's a free field for the jungle, for mid. The only things that were stripped away are the 3 picks that the Warriors had up, and admittedly, of those, only 2 of them affected a couple of players on the Kings. So we'll see. I'm also interested to see if this is a last pick Hunter that they lock in, or if there's going to be a mage, right? We got double Hunter from both squads last time around. Fafnir plays into that style very well for the Warriors.
The harder they fall.
We're still looking at jungle locked in there for the Nemesis, what they want to do in solo.
Surely we don't see the last
It's
pick
going to be the
Vulcan here.
Shin.
That could certainly come through. Like BMT
Yeah.
has a Vulcan, and it's like available, and it like has a good matchup. So let's just see. I think the double Hunter composition is more prominent here just because you already have the Hades. But it looks like, I mean, this was very prioritized in the ban column last time. But the Camelot Kings, when Genex takes 5 bans, you can get 10th pick Vulcan in a meta like this. And I'm sure they're happy about that one.
Yeah, have to be feeling good. We saw what a Vulcan could do earlier, Snoopy playing it. A lot of good burst damage there. A lot of fun setup for him. I mean, imagine getting hit by a stun from the Horus that strips protections, and then all of a sudden you get hit by this massive ultimate. I mean, you're talking one-shot potential here for the Kings as the build goes on. But the question I have for you, and this maybe is going to be the game that can prove it, but do you still like these double hunter comps, especially with the Fafnir, or do you think that the Kings have an edge up because they have a mage?
I'm not going to say they have the edge up because they have a mage. They definitely are going to be. I think that BMT's positioning is going to be top tier here. It has to be for this composition to work because the Oni Warriors, you got to imagine a Bracer, a Shoguns, and then the Coerce is going to come through. And that essentially means Fire Giant, Gold Fury, Pyromancer, those will be done in 6 seconds flat. Like, it'll be so quick, and it takes a while for Earthshaker to travel that distance.
Yeah.
So even if BMT is there for the objective, if he's not pre-firing that ultimate, he's probably not making it in time. So vision, something the Camelot Kings have to be prioritizing here, making sure they know exactly where the ADCs of the Oni Warriors are. But even late game, I mean, Variety had a great performance on that tier. Now he's going to be on something immobile like the Hades, just standing still for the Prot Shred from the Nemesis, for the Stinger from the AMC, and for the auto attacks from Ishtar. I'm looking at the front line here from the Kings. Their positioning has to be top tier as well. It's going to be real hard to live through all that damage.
And we've seen some of the struggles that a Hades, especially if he starts to fall behind,
Yep.
a Horus, especially if he starts to fall behind, can suffer, especially with the double hunter on the other side. Amu's and Cobb, look, you did 37,000 damage last game around. I'm expecting a fair amount. Granted, the game was long, right? So some of that maybe you can cut down if it's a 25-minute game, but it's a lot of damage to be able to put out in a short amount of time, despite the nerfs that were thrown his way. The Warriors seem to value that up there. The Naja is where I want to turn, because we've seen a lot of very successful Lancelot games coming down from Twig, and we got to see another one last time around. Does this Naja help kind of shift that style over, or should I be expecting more, expecting less? Like, what are we going to get out of this?
I mean, from what I want to see from Naja has always been just good setup for the follow-up. They've got the Vulcan. If Twig's on point, you got to
Yeah, good
imagine
point.
they're fine with getting active, right?
Yeah, you have to imagine that there's a combo waiting for us and waiting for the Kings here. We'll find out whether or not they're going to be able to close us out in 2 and the switch makes sense, or if the Warriors will push us to 3 in Game 2 with J-Mac and Mifflin.
Thank you so much. Should be a fun one with the Camelot Kings. Captain Twig back on the Naja. I believe the last time that he grabbed this pick, Mifflin went 10-0 in his matchup and hasn't really been given a chance to play it soon. And if you're Genetics right now, Miff, you are probably giggling at the fact that you just ate like 6-7 bans in your column and still are able to pick up one of your best gods. At the end of the day, this Horus for Genetics has been a signature pick of his pretty much ever since he started playing competitive Smite.
Yeah, and it just fits the Camelot Kings. Hey, we're playing the objective playstyle. It's, hey, we're on tier 2, you know, Phoenix exposed, drop to tier 2, teleport minions into the Phoenix, or group up on the Gold Fury, grab that, teleport to the Pyromancer. It's just those types of plays, I think, really should be associated with the Camelot Kings, and it's one that they're apt to go towards. But maybe the most egregious thing in P's and B's is not the 5 Guardian bans from the Oni Warriors that still leaves a Horus to Genetics. A 10th pick overall Vulcan with this composition from the Camelot Kings at that, set up for Variety, from Genetics, or Captain Twig, all just make it so easy to line up those Earthshakers. I feel like that's a bit criminal that it made it that far.
I just thought it was maybe one of like the coolest things that you could do with this combo. I doubt we'll be able to see it. It would take a lot of communication to actually execute it. But imagine like Horus ulting, getting it ready, and then you fire a Vulcan ult where you're going to land with the Horus ult, and then you just have the setup as soon as you like crash down. Like you fire it, you land in from the Horus ult,
And you buy
then set up.
entangling wings as well,
Yeah,
so
and
when
then
you land, they're
then
stuck.
You sprue them on landing.
Yeah.
That would be cool. I doubt we'll see it happen, but that would be cool.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if that's like super effective, like
But it
a
would-
usage of all your ultimates,
But
but
it would be cool.
it is certainly dope. Like if we were to evaluate Smite on a pure dopeness basis, that is pretty high up there.
Genetic stun, blinging from Captain Twig, finds the sash onto Neil Ma. The Scepter will go to Cuvo Fred and the Oni Warriors. But the early pressure, at least from the Camelot Kings, to try and get that fight back. Early blink down from Captain Twig means we probably won't see it up in about until that level 4, level 5 mark for the Naja. The battle in the mids, and I think you were kind of right to bring up this Vulcan discussion. We've been talking a lot about The nerfs that have come the way of AMC, eating some damage off of Swarm, some less cooldown on the ult, his ultimate being less effective at that shred. Not a lot of changes happened towards Vulcan. In fact, some mage items actually getting some buffs this patch.
Yeah, already Sands of Time got a buff, now has a little bit of additional damage on minions, so Big Man Tings will have a bit easier time clearing out some of these waves. Could itemize towards any number of the slew of mage items that has had adjustments recently. Will likely be that Book of Thoth in first slot, though. Wasn't a recent adjustment, but an adjustment, I believe, like 2 patches back. Book of Thoth now has penetration, flat pen, when you've got it maxed out in stacks, so Big Man Tings should be able to deal some pretty sizable damage a bit earlier than he would have maybe 3 or 4 patches ago. Otherwise, I'm keeping my eyes on Dardes. The AMC put out plenty of DPS in the previous match, but maybe not the same style of play that we'd become accustomed to of CC anybody, remove him from the game with Stinger. And it's not as if the itemization changes to Hunter's mids have exactly favored him. In fact, it's the opposite. AMC has only eaten nerfs, have some of those mid-Hunter items. Transcendence, not exactly the hot commodity that it once was. Now Devourer's Gauntlet seems to be dictating the Hunter meta. AMC not exactly itemizing towards that, though. Transcendence in the first slot. Maintained for Dardes, which means Sustained going to be hard to come by.
There was one brief moment I looked over at player damage, and it was Variety and Captain Twig were 1 player damage apart from each other, just for the fun, but that immediately got squandered by the fact that it's a solo laner, and Variety can just get free and easy poke there. But now back over to the dual lane, at least for these 2 squads. Even with that Scepter going through, and it's something I have been noticing, is when these junglers are rotating over, they're the ones typically taking this Scepter, where if it's just the 2v2 that goes through, typically more often than not it has been the support taking through. Is that just the jungler kind of taking the tax of like, I came over here to get this, this is my reward for it?
Well, I mean a little bit of that, right? Jungler's got that ego, but legitimately just having a little bit more damage on your jungler who's likely to be in a position to put pressure on someone or actively look for kills, getting that little boost to your damage, I think very, very valuable. Otherwise, you give it to your support because he's generally in their face as well.
Quick beads and ultimate from BMT after both were expended from Dardes and Cuvo Fred to try and get that pick onto Big Man Tings. They don't end up getting so, but beads down for a little bit of time on BMT means he'll be susceptible to some of the slows that do come out from Cuvo and Dardes, because at least until Neilma joins the fray, that really seems to be the only major threat on Big Man Tings is slow and oh, another slow.
Yeah, so maybe Heavenly actually something you're considering on the side of the Camelot Kings, just to deal with all the slows from the Oni Warriors. Barring Nika's ultimate, I mean, that really is the majority of AoE CC that you're actually concerned about. Not confirmed by the Camelot Kings. Stolen this time. Rolling Thunder from Vote, able to take away that Scepter. So small win for the Oni Warriors over in the duo lane. But again, worth noting, cripples don't work on backfire anymore. Surprised that we saw the beads. Really was just concerned about that slow. If you're playing at a little bit further range in the future, see a Stinger from Dardes, Big Man Tings can just backfire right on away.
Yeah. A little surprised, maybe. I think you're right to see those beads taken away, but I guess better to be a little too cautious in the early game, especially if you don't have that full movement speed online to try and get away from someone so fast like Dardes or Cubo Fred, who are chasing you down. But level 7's now on the mid laners. Both stacking items started up, Transcendence and Book of Thoth, respectively, for the AMC and the Vulcan. Genetics, though, doesn't find the stun onto Dardes, just a little short on the distance for that stun to be able to connect there. So Dardes will be fine, doesn't have to worry about losing out on his beads this early on.
Yeah, I wonder if Big Man Tings would have even dedicated the ultimate there, if he was just kind of hoping that standing nearby would have been enough threat that Dardes would have felt forced to use those beads. Regardless, Gen X doesn't connect the fracture, so we won't get to evaluate what the world could be. Instead, talk about what's happening right now. And it's a whole lot of farming on map and jockeying for position, Greater Scorpions, contestable farm, been split pretty evenly between both teams, so no exact lead anywhere on map. Experience, though, slightly favored to Cuvo Fred on this Nemesis. He's soaked up a bit more than we've seen from Captain Twig. Fred has walked through mid a couple more times. So a level 7 on your Nemesis with Jotuns in first slot. Getting some of that CDR online early. Maybe you want to make some rotations over towards Variety. I feel like that would be one of the easier lanes for a Nemesis to gank. Otherwise, Yarkor pretty susceptible as well, but those beads, I feel like, are just going to be available for the most part.
10 seconds Until BMT does get that relic back online in even less time than that. Mid-Harpies will go to the Oni Warriors. Gold dead even at 7 minutes in. No bounty has been struck by either team. The most gold you'd see kind of back and forth is about 200 to either side. That just keeps bouncing on the wave to wave, the buff to buff spawn. So for Captain Twig, feels like he's got a couple of good players on his team to maybe try and burn some of those beats, if not just by himself. Variety going to be real good about it late game, I imagine. Even some of the mid game rotations. Genetics, obviously, a real easy beats burner. So you feel that this is at least a competition for Captain Twig to be able to shine with this Naja?
I don't think Captain Twig is the focal point of this draft. I think he is another threat that could work out, could be able to shine, so long as you said, Genetics or Variety is able to burn those beads. But this strikes me as a draft that is just entirely about facilitating things.
Variety will use his beads to get away from Nika's ultimate. Gets a decent bit of heal. Sash on a Cubo Fred. The beads are now gone. The Windfire wheels just off the mark. As Cubo Fred's able to dash the opposite way, get on out of there. And Variety will heal back up as if a fight never even happened over his lane.
Merely able to get involved over on that duo. Good leap to avoid the updraft as Captain Twig takes away some of those back camps. Like what we saw from Twig there, good patience, goes for the sash, says Cubo Fred, you're gonna beads. I know it for a fact. Does get him, but whiffs the ultimate immediately afterward regardless. A tough situation, but certainly not something easy to line up, especially against the highly mobile Nemesis that Cubo Fred is piloting. Burning those beads, I think, still pretty valuable. Your blink not only is on a shorter cooldown, but also isn't exactly your defensive tool. Nemesis now a little bit more susceptible. We'll have to think very wisely about whether or not you really want to dash in any of these situations, because if you do, Variety could lock you down with the Pillars of Agony, Genetics can catch you with a Fracture and an Updraft combo, and anytime either of those CCs are connecting, you just got to be worried about that Earthshaker as a follow-up BMT.
Especially if Variety can catch a couple of players in the midst of that one. Just drop your circle on top of another giant circle. Makes for some easy damage for the Camelot Kings, but this slow gameplay hasn't really gotten too much of an advantage for either team. Still sitting dead even 9 minutes in. But, at least as far as some pressure is concerned, been seeing Captain Twig get a little bit more active compared to Cuvo Fred. We saw the one gank in the mid onto BMT from Cuvo, but outside of that, and then the rotation to the Soul Lane to help out Nika, haven't seen too much from Cuvo just yet.
Yeah, Cubo is like a late game win condition where he's got a whole lot of potential to threaten on his own. Whereas Naja, I feel like, especially with the itemization that Captain Twig has been going towards, is really leaning in a bit more towards that facilitator role. Yarkor catches Cuvo in the jungle, drops him real low. Camelot Kings now have priority around the gold for you, and keep your eyes on Genetics. Actually has already upgraded that relic as Neilma takes some damage as well. Death Ball of the Camelot Kings working their way through the entirety of the left side jungle. Are able to strip away that purple. Now it's about to disengage, or maybe re-engage.
Yark, top of the damage charts. And remember, this is the dual lane hunter. This isn't a mid lane Cernan who's boxing up against 3 people all at once. This is just Yark and the duo, pretty much exclusively against Vote. Some early poke against Vote and Neilma at the start of the game, but he's just putting out a lot of player damage so far, sitting at the top over both the solo laners, over the junglers who have been getting a little bit more active now. With the first Trebuchet going to the Warriors, it really won't get a whole lot of value. Camelot Kings can go ahead and strip that one off the map before it even gets to the tower line.
Yeah, not only has it been Genetics that upgraded his starter, but Neilma on the other side has finished up the Cloak of the Ascetic. So team fight potential from both the Oni Warriors and Camelot Kings are at an all-time high. But it just seems like neither team is really feeling the absolute need to start anything up. Oni Warriors scale really well in the late game with a double Hunter Fafnir composition and a late game hyper carry out of the jungle. Camelot Kings want to play around the big man Tings combos, so their team fight is very, very strong. Seems we've got a neutral objective trade, though. Twig, it's trouble on the other side.
Vote goes for the ult, will pull the swords back, and all by himself, Vote's able to steal away the Gold Fury on 84 damage from the swords coming back through. Variety in the middle of 4 Pillars of Agony will get some decent damage throughout, but not enough to save him out. First blood, first objective, and even second blood will go to the Oni Warriors. Can they find a little bit more with Genetics walking forward? Turret dealing some decent damage back in. But 2 picks and a Fury Steel go to the Warriors.
Man, 84 damage from Vote with the Blades of Retribution takes away that Fury. Just an awful feeling for the Camelot Kings, who had not only lost their objective, but lost the team fight on the opposite side. Twig and Variety, they do well to get the Oni Warriors off of the Pyromancer. Would have made it a clean trade had the Camelot Kings just been able to secure their objective, but instead, Warriors take everything. They have their cake and eat it as well. Core pressuring Purple, needs to play where. He spots Neilma, so maybe not a whole lot of threat here.
Will have some backup with Genetics. Maybe a pick onto Neil Ma. No, the jump from Neil just in time to get away from the updraft, so we'll be living at least for the time being. Yarkor, even despite losing out on an objective, even despite the fact that Vote was able to steal that one out, will still play up and aggressive in the lane, try and keep Vote pushed back towards the tower. Second objective, a blink from Captain Twig, miss Sash, and an ultimate just to escape. Everything off the mark from Captain Twig there. Maybe some backup from Genetics. Earthshaker does hit Dardes, crash in by Genetics, but he is low and needs to get out of this team fight. And so do the rest of the Camelot Kings. Captain Twig with no ult and no relic. He'll settle for the mid camps. But Cubo Fred is still lurking by. Unfortunately, there's a turret staring him down, so he won't be able to do too much.
Man, that ult placement from Big Man Ting, so clean to separate the entirety of that fight. Had anything connected from Captain Twig, you're at least finding one pick there, but instead, Camelot Kings come up empty. In fact, a bit of an overusage of their relics. Blink from Twig and Variety both lost, means your initiation has taken a pretty major hit here. Twig should gain access to beads very shortly, rapidly approaching that level 12 mark, so it should allow him to get a bit more aggressive in his positioning towards some of these team fights. What are we knowing?
Neil Moss stole the Scorpion.
Again? Neilma's taking everything,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, he stole Scorpion. I was watching up on the buffs to see if the enhanced marker came through. They did not. And Variety in danger. Pillars of Agony locks in one. Nika will ult away. Transformation out of Neil Ma, but now is Nika too far in. Ult from Captain Twig off the mark. Not sure if he's using it to escape or if he's using it to try and go for the hit, but off the mark regardless. Camelot Kings not only lose Scorpion, they lose a lot on the retreat.
Has Twig hit an ultimate this game? I haven't heard
Nope.
the sound effects, man.
Nope.
I don't think so, not yet.
Nope.
14 and a half minutes in. Where's he on the damage charts? Yo, Ring Toss doing some work this game.
Hey, Sash hit a couple of times.
Yeah, Sash doing some work this game. 'Cause
Ring
it's
Toss-
not his items.
Ring Toss does slap.
Yeah, it really does. It's a great
He used to
ability.
slap way harder though.
Oh, man.
Let's buff Ring Toss back.
He's gone Facilitator, but I have not seen a Kings member facilitated yet.
He's,
That's all.
he's facilitated his own escape.
He's like, I am so healthy.
Dude,
Thank
he's
God
like,
for Sledge.
I am out of these fights, bro.
They will not be catching me.
Maybe.
Windfire wheels, I ride them.
He does indeed. Sometimes. Vote. Tries to steal away the scepter with his ultimate. Genetics
you're squishy,
will
bud.
not. Oh! I thought he had made it there for just a brief moment, but does not indeed. Maybe it was the Bees kind of helping out on that one, but another pick for the Oni Warriors. 3-0 now, and 2,500 gold for the Order side team. About to add another nice little pocket of gold there. Unless Variety has something to say about it, or Big Man Tings.
Get off.
Earthshaker, well, they got off it all right, but Variety won't be there to stop this one, so just a delayed Pyromancer. Captain Twig sacrificing some of his HP to steal away one of the offerings.
Well, Genetics is dead. Someone's got to do it.
And you know the Camelot Kings are ones to steal those offerings as often as they can.
They absolutely will. You know, I actually like what we had seen from that small interaction with Genetics. If the strategy with your AMC is to just burn the guy in front of you, but you haven't got the penetration to do it anymore because of some changes to the kit, Stinger now only having 10% on it, Cubo Fred brings the rest, you know? That
Hey.
ultimate from Nemesis, the strategy that had favored the Oni Warriors has really become viable once more, so long as you're willing to drop both ultimates on one guy. If that happens in the late game to Genetics, I'm sure he's fine with it. But as of now, any individual member of the Camelot Kings caught straggling in the jungle will just be killed so quickly, especially if they're largely immobile. So Yarkor very susceptible to that combo. Twig as well, even with his slightly tankier build. I like what we've seen from the Oni Warriors. Now it's going to come down to an actual team fight, though. It's about 3,000.
separating both squads. Not exactly enough that I think the Camelot Kings are going to be overly concerned in their ability to take an engagement. But you are starting to get to the danger zone, I'd say. Around 4,000 or 5,000, gold lead starts to feel a bit stifling. So if the Oni Warriors group up on this Fury, expect the Kings to be there.
Twig sashes Nika. Ults out again. Another Naja ult that will not find damage. Big Man Ting's ult won't find anything either. Just zoning. Genetics dashes back to Variety. Fractures out. Leap in by Neilma just because he can. Because they've got the advantage to do so and can now set up around the Oni Fury. Double crit online for Vote means his Fury's HP is going to go pretty quickly to the spread shot damage. And this time, didn't have to steal it away. Instead, we'll just get to walk up and take it. Oni Warriors with another Fury to their name.
And the objectives being desynced means the Oni Warriors will be able to very easily group up on Pyro or more likely Fire Giant, considering the clock so far, 18 minutes in. It's around that 20-minute mark where Fire Giant becomes a viable option for most of these teams. Oni Warriors with a lead might be able to expedite that process ever so slightly. Because that poke is just crazy.
Good lord. Yark is gone. Genetics will dash out. Now, Mifflin, as a support player, I look across the board here and I see Cubo, Fred, Dardes, Vote. Those are the guys probably killing me. All three physical. I look over at what Genetics has built. And yeah, he's got a Gauntlet of Thieves. Oh, wait, never mind. Vote gets his jolt cut off. He's gone.
Okay.
Nilma's gone. Now Vote's gone. Double kill for Yark. Okay, never mind. You know
Why
what?
are you asking about his build?
You know what? I'm just gonna
Needs the
stop
attack
myself
speed.
there. You know what? Extra attack speed plus the frit. You know what? Genetics is smart, man.
He's facilitating the world champion MVP.
You know what?
What do you know about it?
You know what? He's a genius. What is my tiny brain trying to think about things for?
Yeah, stop thinking about it. All right,
He's just doing
let
it.
actions speak. Genetics has done
They
so.
speak louder
You want to
than
know what to
words, bro.
say? Genetics says say less. All right, he's gonna do it on his own
He's good, man.
by helping Yarkor
Yeah.
with an additional attack speed.
And a
Works
Frit-
nonetheless.
Oh, and a
Camelot
Bracer.
Kings, Fire Giants.
Up. Bracer dropped down.
sure it's
Captain. Poor guy.
Twig, bro.
Sassed into Nika twice now. And both times Nika's called the bluff. The Kings get the Fire Giant. They lost their jungler. Pick on Cubo is good. But Nika's got the jab. He'll get out. Poor Captain Twig, man. You know what? He is facilitating the team. If he didn't sash into Nika, Nika would have tried to steal that Fire Giant. You know what? Props to him.
Yeah, Twig's sitting in the grayscale, just patting himself on the back, like, "Yep, we got that one." And I suppose he's right, but at what cost? Should cost you something. Tier 1 tower, the first step for the Oni Warriors, but it is answered on the opposite side. Variety of Big Man Tings keeping up their split push. Nika, no access to the ultimate as of now, had to use it to shut down Twig. So maybe a tier 2 in response from the Camelot Kings. Won't be easy. Nika already removing that wave. The Kings just got to wait for the regroup. Maybe play around Yarkor. Neilma, not exactly tanky if Yarkor is the one hitting them. Fracture into updraft might cost him upwards of 80% of his HP. Instead, this is what you want to see from the Kings. Tier 1, where are you taking the minion wave?
Looks like he's taking it all the way to
We want
the
that.
tier 2 in right. I didn't think he had the distance
He
to
did.
get all the way over there, but
Stop
sure enough.
questioning genetics, man.
You know what? I just need to stop at this point. This is arguably his best pick.
That's right.
He's been doing this since season 6, I think, whenever he joined Unite.
Yeah, whenever Horus came
You know,
out. Let's go!
I'm
First
done.
one!
First ult, doesn't kill. Maybe he just gets the kill. Sword's pulled back. Nope, all right, it's just to get Vote away from the tower. You know what? He's facilitating the team to where he doesn't lose a tower.
That's pretty good. Legitimately, even burning the ultimate off a Vote, that's a phenomenal team fight ability that the Oni Warriors would be really reliant on tower defense. The Camelot Kings can group up, start pushing left-hand side. Vote won't really have much to say about it. Good trade from Captain Twig. We've been having some fun at his expense. Got to sing his praises when he does well. And that's a situation that I would consider in the done well column.
He did it. Got ultimate off Vote. Now pushed up for tier 1 tower for his team, and now towards tier 2 left side. Dardes and Neilma the only ones there, and that'll be enough to deter the Kings from pushing too far in. Instead, they may just join Variety in the mid lane, as a tier 2 is available over there. But they'll be met by a little bit of resistance this time around. Full 10 stack towards the mid. Tower eating quite a bit of damage, though, from the Hunter. The Arcor popping out some good damage numbers.
Yeah, but the poke from Vote from that range, so difficult to deal with. It's not the Odysseus bow build, so Vote only single target in his poke with that one guy. Even just one crit would make it very difficult for him to feel comfortable stepping forward. Oni Warriors grouped significantly towards the mid. May have their attention split now as the Camelot Kings approach that left side tier 2. The Kings keeping them guessing. They are rotating as 5. Genetics and Variety slowly through the jungle.
Mystic carries the first one there. Big man Tings. Doesn't find anything with the ult. Swords onto Variety. Forces the dash out for the Hades. But tier 2 in left. Half HP. Slowly healing back up thanks to the Scepter. The Camelot Kings will give up their push towards the left and towards the mid. It's a Fury in trade. With only 30 seconds left on Fire Giant buff, not much more the Camelot Kings can do on the bottom side of the map.
Plenty of camps to clear out before you head back to base. Over about a minute, maybe 20 seconds till Fire Giant respawns. So I think the Camelot Kings can clear out a good deal of farm, back, spend it up, and have a bit more of an even fight come Fire Giant time. Oni Warriors, even in spite of a phenomenal Fire Giant swing favoring the Camelot Kings, have maintained a very slight lead. And I mean it when I say slight, but they've got it nonetheless. An even game, to be sure. Significant power spikes have been hit, though, by the Warriors. In particular, Nika now has access to Manticore's spike around this Fire Giant. hi-rez for Cuvo Fred, so his burst potential much, much higher as well. Some of that defense you had been calling for from Genetics finally starts to build up. Emperor's Armor in third slot. I think the Camelot Kings will likely group up first around the fire, but pretty unlikely that they actually pull it. It's about the picks. Both Oni Warriors and Kings need to find some sort of opening, one kill, to make that Fire Giant a bit more feasible.
Captain Twig will walk up, but he's met with a bubble from Cuvo Fred. Not much that Twig can do in that regard. Bubble and beads means that Cuvo should not get picked up by a Satchel combo, unless somebody else can take that one away from him. We do see it's the only bubble at the moment. Nika still hasn't gone back to base to finish out his Magi's cloak. Will stroll his way back into the jungle. Fire Giant spawning in now. Just a couple of seconds. Camelot Kings have 3 of their players immediately around the pit. Big Man Tings making his way in, as well as Variety, who's a little bit slow to this fight. The Warriors are privy to it. They can maybe try and start this fight up, but they'll at least sit back knowing that they have vision control within the pit.
Vision in pocket, only 1 sentry. Big Man Tings, the sole holder of it, should be able to reestablish a bit of vision in the pit itself. Good hammer from Neoma. Prevents that fracture from Genetics. Would have lost a lot of HP there had that connected. Camelot Kings reestablish vision control of the Fire Giant itself. But that's just about it. Periphery still has a good deal of pressure from the Oni Warriors. That one ward just below the Fire Giant should put in some work if the Camelot Kings will be getting aggressive here. I'm keeping my eyes. Captain Twig could legitimately completely separate this engagement with a great ultimate. The same could be said of Nika on the other side. But as far as 1v1s are concerned, I don't think Twig really wants to line up against Cuvo Fred, so the jungler 1v1 that we tend to see in the middle of the map probably won't be happening around this Fire Giant's power play, or push rather. Instead, the Camelot Kings have given up a whole lot of positioning. Big Man Tings very, very far away. It's just Genetics in the Fire Giant pit, and neither side has done a whole lot to push the envelope or create an opportunity. Both the Oni Warriors and the Camelot Kings just waiting for some unforced errors.
Pyromancer even about to respawn now. Dash in on towards Neoma. Dash out for Genetics. Pyromancer still being picked up by the Kings, will be dropped right away. And slowly teased by both the teams. Bubble still up for Cuvo Fred. He doesn't want to lose that in this engagement. A lot of CC that could put him in danger. As the Kings do get the Pyromancer. Some big crits onto Variety. He can't go under the wall because the Stinger was in him the entire time through. Beads a little too late. And now Neoma and the Warriors to transform. And with the double Hunter, this Fire Giant will not last very long, but it gets dashed on Neoma. Sunlight Swords come out. Captain Twig beats away, but Big Man Tings is gone.
Hit
Or
nobody.
the Earthshaker can even land. Not a single person hit. And a blink out for Captain Twig. The Oni Warriors with their one pick and go right back to fire.
Yeah, I don't even think Variety realized he had the stinger in him. That Beads comes out so late. Now the Oni Warriors, with a pick on the 2, get Fire Giant for free. Nothing in exchange, barring a couple of relics and cooldowns. I liked what we'd seen from Captain Twig there. Sash timing on the Neomop, perfect to make sure the Fire Giant knockup connects. If Big Man Tings is a little bit closer by, maybe we're talking about an Earthshaker. It completely disrupts the entirety of that push, but instead, the Oni Warriors have done a good job of separating the engagement, diving on their own right. Big Man Tings forced to ult defensively, connects with no one. Genetics even tries to use To the Skies immediately just as another shell for his teammate, the protections, the health, HP shield you get on landing. Maybe could have helped out Big Man Tings, was a bit too slow there as well. The Oni Warriors, they spend a lot of time waiting for unforced errors. They find it. Variety just steps up too far and doesn't have the eyes for the stinger in his chest.
Yeah, he's probably sitting there spamming his button going, man,
Oh,
why can't I go? Like, why can't I dash under? You know, what's happening to me? But ends up for just sitting there. Beads were still up for him at the moment. Didn't realize until the very end. By that point, it was already too late. Stinger falls out of him as he dies. And now the Oni Warriors, with the first real advantage of the game, about 3K gold and climbing up. Oni Fury goes down to the Warriors, and they'll be able to build it back up. Get themselves to about the lead that they had earlier on, where the Camelot Kings had slapped them back down.
Got them right where we want them,
And
says the Kings.
And it really feels like we're kind of in the similar situation of last game, Mifflin, where while gold is a completely different story through, it was one team fighter on Fire Giant that the Oni Warriors at least extended the game for a little while longer for themselves.
Yeah, and this time around, the Camelot Kings, the game being not as far in as it was, I should say, are still in need of gold. Genetics, 2 items away from 6 stacks. You're starting to finish up the 6th item for both Big Man Tings and Captain Twig. Starters confirmed, but still working on some of that itemization as well as some of those relic upgrades. The Oni Warriors, though, taking a slow approach to this siege, have given over an opportunity to the Camelot Kings to regenerate some of those relics. Beads nearly back up for both Variety, Tings, and Twig. So, the Oni Warriors have got to contend with a stronger base defense as well. You've got a standard mage in Vulcan. Big Man Tings should be able to apply some pretty good, decent AoE damage. Very easy for him to just backfire wave and keep those minions at bay as well. And one phenomenal ultimate, sure, a little bit more difficult to come by with Aegis back, could still change the game.
Emperor's Armor doing some decent work for both these squads. Big Man Tings throws out the old
Got
hits too, but it was both of the tanks who got clipped by it. Not a whole lot of damage from that ultimate out of BMT, but it at least pushes the Warriors off the Phoenix, if only for a moment. Transformation out of Neil Ma can now get the Warriors set up as they are full stacked on top of each other, waiting for that AoE coerce. Neil Ma will hold off on using that though.
Where's Genetics going?
Genetics went from one side of the Phoenix to the other. Sun Swords come out. Nika doesn't find anybody with his ultimate, and now Frenzy popped in response. Left Bird is gone. Variety doesn't find the gap close that he was looking for. And now, reinitiation by Nika, and maybe a little more, will force the Camelot Kings, I should say, back to base.
That was an amazing bluff from Genetics. The transformation from Neoma, as Genetics says, all right, I'm going to scare him off. Just goes into the skies, fully channels it for no distance traveled. And the entire time he is channeling, the only one saying, where's he going? They're saying what we're saying. Where's he going? What's the plan? Are they going to dive on us? Let's play defensively. Hold your cooldowns. And he just eats up some of that transformation timer from Neoma. Does eventually still lead to the death of that left Phoenix, but a small micro mind game from the Camelot Kings support does make it a little bit easier for them to hold on to their base. I'd liked what we'd seen from the Oni Warriors. Nika jumps on a Captain Twig in that fight, keeps him separated, doesn't really come up big with an ultimate, but still does find some position, some space created for the rest of his team. Dar doesn't vote, just doing their ADC job, which is walking into the Phoenix and hitting it. This time with Coerce, making it a bit easier. And the Oni Warriors have taken the most valuable structure off the map. Now the Camelot Kings, if they want to defend this Fire Giant, have got to be concerned about their Titan's HP. Haven't had the opportunity to push out too many waves on that left side. Big Man Tings rotates over. Would show himself on map. Got a bit of time until Fire Giant spawns, about 20 seconds. Won't be able to push it out enough to be not a concern, though, for the Camelot Kings. Deal with this wave, maybe the next one, start your rotation. And the only Warriors, all they've got to do is simple. It's extend the fight, make it go as long as possible, and eventually the Titan of the Camelot Kings will just start taking damage from these enhanced waves regardless of the situation. The Camelot Kings really need this first bit of the engagement, the initiation, the start of the fight to go very well. The longer it goes, the more it favors the Warriors.
Variety starts the fight, but Stinger right back on the Hades. He's gone. And the damage from BMT is not quite there. Nika strikes the first kill of the fight. And another one onto your core. This one by Neil Moth. Vote picks off Captain Twig, who has stepped too far into enemy territory with only Genetics and BMT left alive up against 5. Mifflin, this could very well be the end of game number 1 because now all 5 of the Warriors are pushing up towards mid.
Minion wave's already there. The Warriors just got to meet their PvE in the base. Could take out this Phoenix, but it seems like a waste of time to me. Only Warriors seem to agree.
BMT needs some big damage, but his ultimate is down, and so is his health bar. He is just dove on by the entirety of the Oni Warriors. Genetics gone as well, and the Oni Warriors will extend the set to a third.
Wouldn't be phase 3 if it didn't go all 3, didn't it? This is another one that has gone the distance. Camelot Kings stumble throughout the early, and the Oni Warriors able to find a pretty nice team fight around the Fire Giant and never lose their grip afterward in this one. Clean stuff. I'd call it a bit of a jungle diff.
I think one Naja ult is all that ended up making
Maybe
it.
a little bit more than one.
No, I think he legitimately only hit one Naja ult that entire game.
We'll give him like a plus minus of 2 because we don't see everything that's happening. So 1 to 3.
So one that we saw,
We confirmed got 1.
we confirmed one visually, but the rest up in the air at least to be had there. Maybe not the greatest performance out of Captain Twig in the jungle this time around. Camelot King stumbling just a little bit in game number 2, and with it, the Oni Warriors are now able to push us to game number 3. We're going to take it to a quick break, and when we come back, game number 3 right around the corner.
Won't you hold me like I'm yours? Show me that I'm yours. You know just what I
set here so far as the Warriors take game number 2. And Trelly, as much as the first one was the Kings getting slightly ahead and
Yep.
then admittedly a little shaky ground in the middle and finally finding their way here, it was almost like that for the Warriors, except they get a steal early on, and I feel like that was the first essentially of a long string of wins for them, save for a little blunder at a Fire Giant once that causes them some trouble.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. I mean, the Camelot Kings were not really able to get too much start, and it just seemed like the Oni Warriors had the superior draft and executed it so well.
Yes.
I think it turns out, and I know the Horus was fine, but like putting 6 bans into genetics worked out for him in this case, right? Because I think Captain Twig was largely mitigated, maybe some by Cubo, but a lot of just by the Naja, not really finding too many impactful ultimates.
Yeah.
I know that Mifflin and J-Mac were highlighting it, just weren't able to do that. The damage was decent, but the ultimates is what you pick that character for, and it was just not able to find them. You've got this Vulcan BMT is sitting there waiting for the setup, and it just was not coming through. But I mean, the Oni Warriors as a whole, they were looking real clean once they got to late game, and I think that's when their comp really took off. The double Guardian Nika was popping off. These ultimates were so clean from the Xingqian, able to set up so much, and I think the double Guardian, double ADC with the shred from Cuvo, it was just a very well-drafted comp, and they executed on it perfectly.
Especially with a few of the Xingqian ults that we got throughout that one, right?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of really pivotal moments that the Warriors were just absolutely in control. And so we enter the game number 3 here soon with the mentality that, well, the Warriors came in and won their game pretty handily. We're higher to that. The Kings came in and won their game pretty handily. So we'll see how close game number 3 is. Both of these teams seem to have a pretty good grip on the other. But 4-1 and 7, have to give the shout-outs over there to Kivo. 1-0 and 9 there for Nika. So a lot of really good KDAs. Not quite the 37,000 damage we saw after game number 1, but 23k from Dardez, 24k from Vote, and both still being able to outdamage their counterpart. And Trelly, I was going to meme this earlier. I was like, man, this would be a funny joke, let's call it. And I'm going to put it in parentheses because it's probably not. But, like, Double Hunter just beat the guys with the mage. I don't know that it's going anywhere.
Well, I mean, that could be the case, but I think if the draft from the Camelot Kings was a bit easier to execute on, something like if Twig's on Hunbats instead of the Naja, much easier to execute CC. I think that game could have went a little bit differently, especially because they got to late from an even standpoint. So we'll have to see what the adaptations are. This time the Camelot Kings are in first pick, so I think they can play this one a little bit differently. There's a few picks that we don't expect to get in the hands of the Camelot Kings, Yamoja being one of them, and I imagine the Khepri. But this was the adaptation I was waiting for. The AMC is gone, and now Darda is going to have to play something different in that mid lane.
And like you said, it's going to be a different ball game immediately with the Kings having first pick. I mean, you have to talk about the fact that we have had Ishtar as a very high priority. Kernanos has been in that conversation. Naja was in that conversation once upon a time. But if I'm looking at the Yamoja, I'm looking at the Terra, suddenly you start talking about Ymir's as well, one of the most banned gods against the Kings. Khepri, hell, given what he did in game 1, and the fact that he had to get banned there in game number 2, definitely an option for the Kings. They've banned out, as you had mentioned, the Amus and Cop, trying to stifle some of that. Dardez, just different on that god when it comes down to it. As it turns out, an incredible performance for them. I think one of the gods that they have not gotten often, but tend to win with, or at least have a very solid performance out of mid. Taji as well, one of those bands that it just has to have happen pretty much against the Warriors. If you don't, it's usually bad news bears. And then the Cupid gets to join as well. Something that Vote, as we saw earlier today, if you were watching at the beginning of the set, just had a lot of fun highlights. But we do get the Khepri ban from the Warriors, which leaves open possibilities for Hunters right now, considering they've been a much shorter list. Also leaves open support conversations, since we've seen quite a few of those get first pick, especially this phase.
Yeah, this was pretty much how I expected these picks and bans to shake out. Maybe the Cupid ban, just something that they wanted to go to, but the triple guardians from the Oni Warriors, prioritizing the Khepri, the Terra, and the Yamoja, and then the AMC Daji, those had to be the must bans for me. And now that does leave open the Cernanos over towards the Kings, but The Oni Warriors get to grab Ymir and Ishtar. If they want the Ishtar, of course, which, has been a very popular pick, I would be surprised if they let this one go.
Blades of
So
light,
that will be the call,
smite my
insta-locking
foes.
those options, which I think very smart call. So now we get to see what's the adaptation here. Try and get Captain Twig on something much easier to execute on. The Naja, already difficult to make work, even with those buffs. It's not, even if those ults connect, you got to make sure those beats are done, that sort of thing. I think Hunbat's much easier to execute on. You're still going to get tons of value. Could be something they look towards.
Yeah.
He has had a good performance on the Lancelot as well. So those are the two picks I'm looking out for. Just easy to execute on CC and good dive. But grabbing that Hades over for variety is certainly going to make the beads burning also super easy.
You dare challenge divine
Then go back to
rule.
the Horus as well. And this one is despite, or well, I guess without the 7 technical supports being stripped away before they had to go for it. The Horus feels pretty solid. It's one of those picks, if you look at last game and you think, well, it didn't really provide too much, it didn't necessarily be a detriment in and of itself, and that's kind of what it is, right? When you're a support, and I think that would have been true, and we've seen it countless times with Ymir sometimes, and we've had the pros say this themselves. Ymir will absolutely carry a game on his back, and then sometimes he just feeds his brains out, and sometimes you just end up in those moments. We'll see which one Neil is going to be piloting here. But the Hades, the Horus, feels like some good pickups for the Kings. They lock in a Xing Qin in answer on the other side with the Warriors. And then the bands start to roll through. Vulcan taken away by the Warriors. Pele banned out by the Kings. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is another mage. It feels like the Kings, I mean, as far as double hunter goes, most of the other hunters, unless you're getting Kernanos Ishtar on the same team, it hasn't been a really long list of others to throw in mid or to pick up as a carry.
Yeah, I think with the Cupid and the AMC taken away as well from the Camelot Kings, they have pretty much cemented this as a mage territory, at least for now. I think Dardes still has some hunters he could go to if that's the choice, but hey, Hera got some buffs. I still have, I still want to see it. I don't think it's gonna come through, especially into a draft like this. Into Hades doesn't seem like a good time, but with the double mages banned, there are still those assassins I was talking about for Twig open. I'll be waiting to see where they go to for the jungle, but it's not time for that. Right now, the Oni Warriors got to show us. Are they going to show, the jungle pick for Cuvo, or what Dardes is going to be piloting? For my money, probably Cuvo's pick. I think Dardes is going to try and leave it till the end, and it will be that Nemesis. So we get to see the 10th pick, mage/hunter for Dardes. On her still available, something he likes to go to, but I'm telling you, I want to see the Hera. It's not good in this matchup, but it got a buff, man. Come on.
I like the triple down, though. Like earlier, or I guess it's a double down in this case. Earlier, you're like, well, I'd like to see the Hera. I mean, it's not good in this matchup.
Yeah.
And then, I'm glad you still agree with yourself. It's not good into the matchup, but I'm surprised that, even
the element of
acknowledging it,
surprise.
you're
That's
still
what it's
going
for.
into it. Now with the Hunbats there, I'm wondering if this is going to be a turnaround. Scylla hovered right now. And Trelly, you got to think, especially if it gets locked in, someone who got a pretty good buff to
Scylla buff,
their
Scylla
early
buffs.
clear.
Let's
And
go!
locked in as well for the first time this phase. How are you feeling about the Scylla right now?
She's a monster. I'm excited. I can't wait. Her early game was buffed. There's no way. We're still going to the Morgan 10th pick. Wow, okay, double Nemesis should be showing up in the late game. That could be interesting, but...
Or a Scylla for himself.
Yeah, or a Hunbats. I think there's a lot of great options here. We'll have to see how much the nerfs to the Morgan as well as the buffs to Scylla come into play here. Sands of Time doing a little bit better for the early clear as well as Crush, so the Camelot Kings either are sitting on a gold mine of untapped potential or are about to get rolled through in the early based on the double Guardian composition here from the Oni Warriors. I'm excited, though. Team fight galore, and the Camelot Kings have a lot of circles.
Now, not only a lot of circles, but a lot of good, collateral, there we go,
Yeah.
circles. I was going to say colloquial, but that doesn't make any sense. Collateral circles
Yeah.
does make sense. Hades, Hunbats, both of those work real good at setting up a Scylla, so that is really where my mind is at for them, that synergy. Although, and we have to talk about it because you mentioned the buff, and I do want to be clear, it was 20% increased damage to all minions,
Yep.
including in the jungle. So, Scylla's gonna be farming, bro. Like it is. I could see being like the King's dream, maybe Shinto's dream as well. Just the capability to clear as much as you want a lot faster. You're already leveling Crush anyway.
Yep.
And so it feels like it's gonna help her, like you said, get online a lot faster than the Morgan.
And that's the thing. I mean, Scylla has always been this late game, no pun intended, monster. It's just been how do you get to that point? Are you able to match the farming speed of your opposition? For the past couple patches, the answer has been no, but now, hopefully, with the Crush changes and Sands of Time, and we've even seen Conduit Gem go back into the mid lane a bit, so can you bridge that gap from early to late game where Scylla actually becomes this one-shot machine? Hopefully that's the case. I want to see some Scylla success, but also I want to see competitive set more than anything, and I think both of these teams got something they were looking for.
I thought you were going to say what I was thinking, which is that sometimes you just want to see somebody get one shot.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
really
fair.
care who it is. I just want to see them get deleted from the map. It's always really exciting.
Oh, yeah.
When something like that happens. You get the Xing-Chin, the Ymir. I keep trying to fuse names together, man. The Xing-Chin and the Ymir put together. As a frontline, I mean, it's a little bit of a change-up, but like the Xing-Chin we saw last game, very, very solid. Ymir just brings more opportunities. Feels like it's a nice wide open door for the front lines. But how does that compare? Like Horus and Hades, we were talking about it to Picks and Bans last time. If they fall behind, they just become squishy.
They do become squishy, and I think that's an issue here for what the Camelot Kings are trying to do, because late game from behind, their comp is very difficult to execute on.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to fully cast I'm a Monster and you're just getting wailed on damage-wise, you're going to get exploded. It's not a fun time.
Well, we're going to find out, can the front line get it done? Will the Scylla surprise us and one-tap someone? Well, we'll see in game number 3.
Should be a very fun game 3 with one of our first Scylla games that we've seen in quite some time. And after her recent buffs as well, should be for an interesting matchup with this god. Remember, as the desk highlighted, 20% extra damage to minions, not just in lane, but in the jungle as well. Should help big man things to the early game. It's J-Mac, Mifflin, and Doug back one more time for the final game of the Camelot Kings and the Oni Warriors. And I think the desk also brought the fact that Morgan also received quite a few nerfs with this patch, but seems the Dart has still put some value on this pick, Mifflin.
Just the ability to transform into another god and like have their stats and their cooldowns and their ultimate is just so valuable. I'm not certain that there are any adjustments that is just going to straight up remove Morgan from the meta. It would be pretty difficult, I think. You'd have to really butcher base stance Morgan for the guys like, literally every mid laner in the SPL, for literally any of them to just like stop picking her. So I'm not surprised to see her back. I'm surprised it was a 10th pick, though.
3-minute cooldown on her ultimate. Does that push
I'm
her out?
still taking her, because every 3 minutes you could just, like, I don't know, double Xing-Chen ultimate, or all of a sudden now you've got a Fear No Evil. It's so valuable.
Wait, was Nika going for an invade on the bottom side of the map there? What in the world is happening? We have a 2v2
Well, he got it. He got it.
at blue buff. He steals blue away. Can he secure his own blue, though, thanks to Cuvo Fred? The answer to that question is yes.
That's tough.
We're seeing a jungle 2v2 on the right side of the map this early on. What is going on these days, man?
Invades. Seems invade meta is just back, and Nika said that supports aren't the only ones that can have fun, you know? He's going to do it himself. Conduit Gem first slot, like Book, Xing-Shen, he's got the damage output for it. That's surprising. I wonder what happens down there. Like, did he just, like, roll up on Variety? I guess so.
I don't know if we can get a look back at any of that kind of regard or not, but man, it would be cool to at least see what had happened. But Blue Buff stolen by Nika, his secured by Cuvo Fred topside, so he doesn't have to worry about any mana loss in this first wave at the very least. In fact, it's even forced Variety to share a little bit of farm with Captain Twig because of it. You saw him go all the way back to his Harpy camp. Gets level 2 now for the Hades, so Variety should be fine in lane. Dash in or even just use that Silence plus your Devour combo. Clear out the wave pretty easily for himself, but... And I was wondering how long it was going to take us to finally see one, Mifflin. Seems it was only set to game 3. Vampiric Strat now picked up by Variety.
Yeah, what's that up to? 35 power now, I believe, or maybe just 30? That thing has just got a massive, massive stat stick on it. Has been shifted away from that slightly more bruiser-centric. You don't really get the HP infusion anymore. Now it's really all about the power and lifesteal. I believe a 2% bump on lifesteal as well. So the survivability that Variety has got, very, very high. Twig thinks twice, walking into that red buff. That is a base stance nerfed Morrigan, but still level 4 to Twig's 2, so it's just going to be the smalls that he takes away from that red invade.
leaves the buff to itself. On the other side, Vote able to confirm his own purple, despite the best efforts of Genetics. So both teams, even with a couple of invades going to the Oni Warriors, maintain a state of parity. And if games 1 and 2 are any indicator, this state of parity is going to be maintained for the next 10 or so minutes, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was almost 10 minutes before we even saw First Blood last time around. Even game 1 went for a little while before any real action had kind of kicked off. Friday will be able to clear his wave out no problem. But still losing out on a blue buff, not having access to that cooldown, not having access to that mana sustain. Doesn't seem to have affected Variety too much. He's been able to stick around the lane. And maybe some of that thanks to that Vampiric Shroud, giving a little bit of extra mana back, giving him that MP5 as well. Doesn't seem too deterred by loss of blue.
No, so far so okay for Variety. Definitely is missing out on the experience. I think that's probably the main thing that he's concerned about, but yeah, mana sustain certainly not an issue.
Nika will Variety get a little bit of damage back to him. Variety has a little bit of means of sustaining back thanks to a few minions being there for Devour Souls, but Nika just getting the better end of him early on thanks to that Conduit gem, thanks to hitting that level 5 mark. Variety not just taking over to 5, has ults of his own, but should be fine in the lane.
Yeah, even a deterrent, I think, from Cuvo Fred rotating over. Nika, desynced cooldown means that he's got to play a little bit more defensively around his leaps, doesn't have the ability to just Whirlwind of Rage and steal his way out of a Pillars of Agony, so Variety should have a slight advantage there, sustained advantage as well, just by nature of being Hades, means that he shouldn't be allowed to stick in that lane. I'm curious, though. Captain Twig, falling slightly behind in farm, still doesn't have access to that ultimate. 4.5 minutes in, you're a bit behind the curve. As far as jungle experience is on average. This blue buff should be it, but having to secure just the major camp might lose you out on that level 5. Instead, hits 5, TP's in. But that's the end of it. Wait, leaps in as well. Twig's crazy.
He's keeping us guessing. And we have the top-down view to know what's going on. We just don't know what's happening in the mind of Captain Twig.
There's like beads on everybody from the Warriors too. Like,
He doesn't care, man.
I feel like Fred could have just stuck that, right? Like he could have just said, "Oh, you leapt on me. Ult, give me your defenses. Let's fight it out. Oh, you ulted on your feet. Beads, trade for first blood." I don't know. Feel like that was maybe even a drop from the Oni Warriors. They could have certainly stuck around in that engagement. I suppose just overly concerned about Variety's damage output, but he hasn't backed yet. How scared of you of like vampiric tier 1 book Hades? I wouldn't be that scared.
Apparently for the Oni Warriors, either they were scared of it, maybe they didn't realize what was happening, maybe they were just so flabbergasted the fact that Captain Twig jumped in against
He's
two
gotta
of them
be
at
cooking
half
something
HP.
up.
They have
BMT's
no
here.
idea what's going on.
Yeah, they're thinking
They're
BMT's like
confused.
around the corner. You know, Fear No Evil and I'm a Monster combo, that's for sure. Genetics about to dunk us too. No way Twig's just jumping in, but
He just
he
did.
was. He was.
He just jumped in and then did a whole lot of nothing right after. Didn't fear no
Disengage.
evil. Just jumped in, said, "How do you do? I'm out of here. Have fun at blue, boys," and dug his way
Bars.
out.
That's not bad. That's not. Oh, okay, J-Mac, I see you. Dardes on the contestable farm. Takes the smalls. Should just be it. Clone eats the stun. Genetics walks himself out of there. I'm curious about the pacing, though. No stacking from Dardes means that you probably want to get this fight started a little bit earlier as opposed to later. Do Morbin first slot. It's a whole lot of power. You're getting a bit more benefit than the Book of Thought that Big Man Tings has elected for. But that's only if you fight now. If the game goes like another 5-6 minutes without any engagement, Big Man Ting's just going to start to slowly outscale with the stacks on Book of Thought. And it seems like the issue of the only mages being able to clear being Morrigan and Vulcan is no longer the case. Scylla's kept up, man. I mean, it hasn't been the same amount of pressure that you'd expect from like one of those two picks, but has done a good job. We'll get a look at it here. Does he one-shot archers? Yep.
He does. Wow. That buff plus Sands of Time really doing work for Scylla. Maybe we'll get to see a little bit more of this goddess as the weekend goes on. Camelot Kings falling a little bit behind the Oni Warriors, about 400 gold, separating these two teams 700 in, or 700? 7 minutes in. For some reason I was reading the time as just a numerical value of 717 for some reason, but
700 seconds, you know, it's like
close enough.
That's like almost 10. That's a little over 10 minutes. You know,
Yeah, we're pushing
you were
close to 12.
You were rounding.
Look, we might as well be at 10 to 12 before anything actually goes down when we watch a Camelot Kings game.
If they were allowed to load in at the 15-minute mark, they would.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the honest truth of it. But the Only Warriors have been playing the Camelot Kings game and playing it just as well as them. I mean, the pacing from the Warriors has been just on par. It's not as if they're getting over-aggressive on the map. They're just waiting for opportunities and matching exactly what the Camelot Kings have brought.
Blue buff stolen. Variety can pick that one up. Can he get out is the question. He is fighting back in, dashes away, has ultimate, doesn't use it, and instead gets flung into... had beads? Had ult? Variety, what are you doing? What?
Yeah, look, I was looking at Nika, and Nika was confused too. He leaned forward. I'm not a mouth reader, but that is universal. My man said, "What?" And that's it. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
I'm a monster. Hits Neil Ma. Crush will get the killing blow on the Ice Giant. And the Camelot King can return the favor onto the enemy support, but I'm still trying to figure out what happened with Did he just like, did his brain just skip a beat or something? Like, what was going on?
Sometimes you think to yourself, "Look, I'm dead no matter what. I'm not even gonna do it. I cannot be bothered." Maybe Variety is in that situation. I feel like-
Maybe.
I mean, you don't want to use your beads, but like your ultimate's fine to use there. You gotta think.
You see what, one tick of it to immune the Xing channel and you're
That's
good?
it. Yeah, and you can walk out.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe if they win, we can ask Variety what was going on there, or
You misplay, you know.
maybe, who knows. Early game stumble for the sole laner of the Kings. Early game stumble for the Warriors support as the trade goes out 1-1, but that 1-1 goes in favor still of the Warriors, considering their lead at this point is pushing upwards to 1.4K over the Camelot Kings. Now, I start to wonder, Mifflin, we always talk about the Kings. They're a team that's adapted to playing the first 15 minutes, kind of PvE variety.
Well, he had beads for this
out.
one.
Hook slam goes. Silence will stop Dardes from maybe getting something there, so he'll be good. But I wonder if it's kind of just become a thing where the teams are now adapting to playing against the Kings in this regard. You know, it used to be, okay, well, what do we do against this team? Like, they always want to play late game. Maybe we just try and fight them early. Feels like some teams are adapting to this style by just playing the late game themselves, by playing this farm game themselves.
Yeah, we'll play the farm game and we'll draft for late game team fight. That seems to be what the Only Warriors answer has been. And so far they're just doing it a bit better than the Camelot Kings. Gold lead continuing to start churning in their favor. Gotta think neutral objective is going to be where the separation starts to occur. If the Only Warriors take a Pyro or a Gold Fury, this lead starts to get a bit dangerous. If the Camelot Kings take one, we're right back to an even state. So picks gotta become a topic of conversation, and the Only Warriors have got a very strong pick composition. Variety with no beads could be under pressure shortly. I'm keeping my eyes on Cuvo Fred and his rotation pass. Could be that he tries to go into the soul lane, take out this Hades, or maybe strip away that teamfight ultimate, and then rotate over towards the Pyromancer.
There you go. Ult for ult now, the solo laners. That's all you had to do, Variety, but he's much healthier this time around. Doesn't want to get flung into the tower, so there'll be a trade out there. I'm actually curious as to which of the two upgrades Variety might go into with this Vampiric Shroud. Do you go for the sacrificial, get a little bit more damage, but take a little bit of extra in return? Or do you just go for the one that gives you a little bit of extra sustain, maybe? We'll have to see as the game goes on. Stun onto Neil Ma. I'm a monster, set up perfectly, but Neil Ma will also tank right through.
Wow!
The Fear No Evil. Crush will only hit Cuvo Fred, but that Crush did a lot of damage to Cuvo Fred. Neil Ma lives through it all.
Man, Neil perfectly channels Shards of Ice to completely immune Fear No Evil. Instant cancels for the double freeze. That was picture-perfect play from your Mir player. As Variety has got a bit of damage coming his way. Dardes forced to disengage. Genetics and Big Man Tings generating the threat. But this Hades, not exactly tanky just yet. Now with Bancroft, it's got a little bit more sustain. Should have an easier time sticking around after fights like that. But had Captain Twig been a bit more farmed, maybe, Dardes finds that kill. So fortunately, it's just that Hydra star for Captain Twig as of now.
Lather, rinse, repeat to Neil Ma, but he'll still live at the end of it all. Captain Twig stun. Dash in and immediately back out.
could be
Variety finds a big silence and finds 2 inside the ultimate. Dart is able to get out through the skies for Genetics. Crashes down on a Cubo Fred. But Nika is there to try and at least save his jungler's life. Can Nika find it out? Triple hook slam, silence, beads, and the jump to get away over the I'm a Monster. It's only Neilmaw falling down.
Perfect peel from Nika there. Able to separate the entire fight with World and Rage of Steel and the knockup. Unfortunately, peel only saves your life, doesn't turn around the entirety of the fights. The Camelot Kings, as the aggressors, get to pick up the Pyromancer for themselves. What did we say earlier? If the Kings grab the objective, we'll be right back to even. Seems to be the case, as the gold has been equalized, as has the experience. This has been a tight match all the way through. That chart just seems to be almost a perfect line across the horizon. Gold Fury got to become the separator soon, which means the duo lane does become the topic of conversation. Parity in the builds, though. Both Vote and Yarkor going down that crit tree. Shadow Steel in first slot. Vote will have advantage on objective DPS, just thanks to that shotgun blast, giving you 3 potential crits on every single one of those auto attacks. But as far as the 1v1 is concerned, I feel like it can just go either way. And Yarkor in matchups of past, especially when he was on the Solar Scarabs, was very apt to look towards those 1v1s. Maybe a bit less likely here, considering Vote has got a pretty decent experience advantage.
Captain Twig goes in. Unfortunately, slams straight into his shield, so all the damage he would have done to Cubo Fred. Pretty much immune and even healed back. Genetics stunned twice. Will be just fine at the end of that one. Fear No Evil catches Cubo Fred. And Captain Twig gets 1, but it's a returning Fear No Evil from Dardas this time around. Ultimate from Variety and from Nika. Genetics gets thrown back to his teammate. Neilmaw does not juke out the Alpha Monster this time, and the crush does a lot of damage to the Guardians, but Variety will go down. The damage from Neilmaw just enough to poke him out. Big man Tings walled away. Neilmaw cannot juke the Sikkim, cannot juke the crush. It's another kill for BMT on a killing spree.
Man, Nika had rotated out just a little bit too early. BMT with the aggressive dash in catches out Neilmaw and finds a bit of value for his team in that exchange. The Oni Warriors still coming out a bit ahead, though. Won't be able to turn it into anything, with Pyromancer being dead and the fight occurring on the right-hand side. Gold Fury is certainly not an answer. Experience gaps start to establish themselves, though, as Neilmaw now 2 levels behind, 1 and 3 on this Ymir. Ahead in itemization, sure, but Relic already fully upgraded for Genetics, I think. Probably a bit more valuable. That Cloak of the Ascetic giving your CDR to the entirety of your team means that you just get the free cast in a lot of these team fights. Spirit Rope for Neilmaw, though. I think it's a smart pickup. All the damage from the Camelot King is going to come back off the back of immense CC. Variety, Twig, even BMT with the Sikkim going to proc it every single time. You'll get value, but maybe not enough to keep you alive. At least not just yet.
Might need just a little bit more, but proactive play from the Warriors. They'll start up the Fury. Genetics, the only one on this side of the map to try and deal with that one. Gold Fury goes to the Oni Warriors. What will the response be from the Kings? Doesn't seem they can do very much with Pyromancer down. No chance to go for a Fire Giant this early on. The Warriors extend their gold lead now to about 2,000 up over the Kings.
Take a peek at Vote's build as well. It's not the standard Shadow Steel immediately into Wind Demon. He's gone Deathbringer off rip. He's got a whole lot of DPS on objective, and he's got a whole lot of 1v1 potential against other squishies. Yarkor might have advantage once Neilmaw gets active in the fight, or if he has to line up against Nika, thanks to the penetration from Wind Demon. But as far as Vote's concerned, he said, yo, Yarkor, you haven't got defense. You probably don't want to fight me now.
Dash out for Genetics, good. Sacred Monkey off the mark by Captain Twig. You think he went back and was just like, well, you know, I've got like 2,900 gold in hand. I guess I could just buy it. It's the old Lassus mentality, you know. I could go back for a Chronos Pendant, but I've got enough for a Rata Tahuti. I might as well just buy the full thing.
And it could be the difference maker in some of these fights, especially when you've got ganks like this headed Yarkor's way. Good reaction, dodges out the stun. So Vote comes up empty here. But if maybe one of those sniper shots was a crit, or 2 or 3 connected, or the stun connects, Yarkor could have very well been pushing up daisies.
Vote now on the run. 3 Kings are here, but it's also met by 3 Warriors. Even Dardes rotating over. That'll be a trebuchet to the Oni Warriors. They'll be able to get a little bit of pressure maybe to help out Vote even further in the dueling. Because look at the gap. I mean, it was 1.5 to almost 2 levels that Vote had over Yarkor, and that's been effectively mitigated down to nothing. And with that trebuchet, it hasn't been pushed up just yet. Could help out, but Yarkor's got no fear. Moments ago, he was under threat in his own Tier 1 tower. Now he's taking out the Tier 1 of the enemy. Variety will ult to get away from Nika's ultimate, but I don't think you want to keep standing there and channeling that against 3.
He is buying time for the rotation, a rotation that had not come. Finally, it's there. Captain Twig nearby. Takes off that HP shield. What's he landed into? It's a stun.
I'm a monster almost lands, but just off the mark this time from BMT. Neilma eats a lot of damage. Monkey Toss hits 3, but unfortunately for Captain Twig, maybe bounces back to a minion instead. The Camelot King so close to coming up golden that time, but just slightly off the mark by BMT.
So it's a 1-for-0 trade. Can the Camelot Kings mitigate loss? Absolutely. Pyromancer on the mend and already down to 50%. Not much going to beat that Crush's confirmation, so the Kings trade Variety for the objective. Oni Warriors, though, fast on the regroup, starting to move their way forward. Votes made the rotation as well. Is this going to be a Fire Giant pull attempt? Genetics hovering nearby. I have no idea what may have tipped off Genetics to this attempt, or whether or not the Oni Warriors realized that he was looking, because it was a significant grouping with presumably no presence shown by the Camelot Kings. I don't think the Warriors had spotted out Genetics, but it's a drop regardless. The game sense of these players on both sides, very impressive.
I mean, as far as experience is concerned, Genetics with a slight 1-level lead up over Neil. BMT 1 level up over Dardes for now. Early transformations from Dardes have been the Xing Chen, but as of recent, now we've been seeing more of the Hun Bats come out this time around. Now with Captain Twig getting a little bit more item online. In fact, we see the Serrated Edge make its way back into the build now with its recent buff that it's gotten. So maybe we see a few more of these Hun Bats transformations from Dardes as far as his team is concerned. Great CC setup for the squad. Bubble will be spared this time. Genetics just a little bit shy with the dash from Cubo to get him out.
Yeah, I wonder. Maybe you wait until Captain Twig finishes up this Heartseeker. Then he's a bit more able to actually burst down some of these squishier targets. Until then, Serrated Edge, sure, 20% penetration on it, very, very strong. Lifesteal power, all that very good. But not exactly the most power possible, so you're not really getting the full value from the Hydra's Lament passive just yet. I think Dardes would likely be better suited either transforming into Variety, who's hit some pretty significant power spikes, Polynomicon now finished up, or even just maintain the Nika transformations as just a massive threatening, needs-burning tool.
Variety 2v1 will scare Nika and Cubo Fred away. Ult from Genetics transports Yarkor out of the fight. Pyro is down. Not really a chance to go for fire, just a disengage for the Kings. Fear no evil from Captain Twig to further disengage the fight, but now it's only BMT and Yark left with ultimates. Pick up by Nika throws Genetics into the wings of the Oni Warriors. He will go down. No, he won't. Able to dash out. Variety is instead the one, and look at the HP on Neil Ma from the crush of BMT. Somehow Genetics makes it out by the skin of his teeth. Unfortunate for a soul laner, he'll trade his life.
Yeah, I think he just barely gets into the air. The dash heal from Genetics on Horus has got very, very low startup frames, so maybe just misses out on that ultimate from Vote. Oni Warriors would have benefited so greatly from a pick onto the other frontliner, the Camelot Kings, but still, 1-for-0 certainly is an opportunity. And the Oni Warriors have regrouped around the fire. 10 seconds left on Variety's respawn. Has elected not to pick up teleport once more. Does have access to that blink, though, to get the fight started once he does respawn, but has to walk up first. Fire Giant pulled out. Twig and Genetics in.
Well, Genetics dash out. He's half HP now on the bird. Cubo, what is Cubo doing all the way back there?
Separating, creating space.
He walked by and did a drive-by slice and dice and said, oh, wait, too many people. I'm going to just go ahead and leave. And back to the mid lane he goes, and a complete disengage by the Oni Warriors. I wonder if the Camelot King, or I wonder if the Kings even realize just how far away the Oni Warriors have walked from this Fire Giant. Genetics will spot now that there's really no one here, and can now go to the Fire Giant themselves. Cubo Fred ults only onto one. Variety is back, and Bubble still saved by Fred as he's able to get away from the silence. Smart idea by the Kings to go for the pull, but better response for the Warriors to group up and
Go for the pull.
now the pull themselves. Captain Twig, the only one remotely in range. Yarkor right behind. Freeze and wall lasting forever. Genetic comes in to try and bail
Got
out
two.
Captain Twig, but it's two for Nika. Neil Ma gets the credit for one. I'm a monster. Doesn't get the value he was looking for. Meanwhile, Vote in the backline with Variety is chunking away the solo laner. And now it's Dardez's turn to go for an ultimate. Grabs Genetics, but there's not a lot of follow-up from the Oni Warriors this time around. Genetics able to get out. No, he will not stun.
There it is.
And the Dark Omen combo after. Dardez drops a second.
Neoma finds massive value in that fight as well. Sure, got to give credit to the double pull off the back of Genetics ultimate, but Neoma with the transformation, or the shards of ice rather, so clean. Instant cancels it to avoid the reset for big man Tings. Had Tings' I'm a Monster connected with Neoma, not only would it have killed him, but it given him an opportunity to maintain that CC immune state and continue his damage onslaught. Instead, Neil sacrifices a little bit of his own damage just to make sure that that opportunity is not given over to the Camelot Kings. And now the Oni Warriors once more have got the initiative. They can reset, get back onto the Pyro, and pull while one is dead. Genetics spends a little bit more time at the grayscale. Could even potentially pull the Fire Giant here, but instead it's a slow play. They want some poke.
And, well,
more
they've
than
got poke. Maybe they can get the kill. One more hit to Variety. Will not find its home. Variety less than 100 HP, was slowly being ticked down by some extra damage, but gets a heal from Genetics. Variety back to base. No teleport available, but no further pull from the Warriors. They sent one back to base, but one of the Warriors is now back as Cuba Fred heads back to the fountain.
Yeah, look at the Warriors' ultimate cooldowns. Nika is still waiting on his. Cuba Fred, Dardez waiting on theirs as well. And the Camelot Kings essentially at full strength as far as ultimates are concerned. So the Oni Warriors will likely be waiting on a couple of those cooldowns before they fight once more. Nika very close to his. That massive CDR stack in his build. Those will be coming freely in the next couple of team fights. Dardez has access to the Changeling once more. Surprised to see the Magi's pick up from Dardez, though. Seems as if he's been struggling a little bit to actually get meaningful damage in base stance in a couple of these exchanges. You'll have the opportunity to close that gap a little bit more easily with Magi's, but whether or not you've got the damage output, I think that's the real question.
Oh, swords catch two. I'm a monster hits two. And Neilma almost down. Needs the extra help from Variety. Nika low. Jump away for the Xing Chen, but a one-man pick for the Camelot Kings. Maybe more. Vote low. Crush Aegis away, but the overhead smash by Captain Twig to bat him down. Nika is forced to run away. Two gone from the Warriors.
Look at the positioning of Cubo Fred and Dardez, though. They know they've got ward advantage on this side of the map. No way the Camelot Kings can know they're here.
Turn around. If they can find the stun, there's damage onto BMT. Fire Giant still being active, though. And the Oni Warriors will give up their chance to maybe push in. Neilma respawning in 5. Vote still down for 30 more seconds. And Fire Giant on all 5 of the Kings.
Kings have got every single bit of advantage here. Not only the Fire Giant, but the minion wave hot on their heels. Genetics decides that his HP a little bit less valuable than the wave's HP, decides to keep it alive for now. As the Oni Warriors slowly regroup, Cubo Fred just now making his way back to base. Vote still 10 seconds on the grayscale. Camelot Kings, they want this bird.
Wall up for Neil will stop a lot of the damage through. Nika doesn't find anybody with ult. I'm a monster, slams Nika, and Yarkor will deal the killing blow. Another pick for the Kings. Vote is just now back up. And Dardez cannot find a stun target. He and Cubo still maintaining bubbles, but the Kings with their health bars, plenty.
Twig's ultimate just comes off cooldown, as does Genetics. Variety still access to his. Imagine we see the Kings go in. It's Twig first.
Vote dashes in, use the Sun Swords, but that's a 1-for-1 trade. Captain Twig is gone. Neilma channeling the shards of ice to lock in Variety, but Neilma's HP is low. Crush off the mark, but not Yarkor's autos. He will land another, and Neilma drop for the bird.
Twig, active decision to sacrifice himself there. Engages with the Sacred Monkey, TP's in and says, look, I'm going to get a good ultimate. I am likely to not survive here, especially with a wall like that from Neilma, making sure there was no escape path for the Camelot Kings jungler. But the space had been created. The goal had been accomplished. Right side Phoenix has fallen down, And the Camelot Kings get to work their swath all the way across the map. Tier 1 and mid quickly follows. Red buff invade for variety. Primal Fury still available as well. And the Kings have pushed this lead even further in their favor. Gotta sing the praises of Big Man Tings, though. These ultimates have been stifling. The damage output from this Scylla has been phenomenal, connecting with these targets and putting them into kill threshold for the rest of the team, and even going undying with 9 out of 10 affected kills. Big Man Tings has found another god to put in the pool.
And that doesn't scare any other team in the Pro League at this point, or even people who may be rooting against the Camelot Kings in that regard. I don't know what will. Now we'll go back to base and start working on his final item, a full Divine Ruin as the pickup for the Scylla. So we can see Soul Gem ready to be fully stacked up, ready for its proc on the next god it hits. Soul Reaver to slam against some of these tanks, and Percent and Flat Pen.
Plus Scylla passive.
Plus Scylla's God, that's an extra 100 power too, isn't it? My lord. What is Big Man Ting sitting on with Red Buff and Fire Giant as far as his power? If we can get a look at that real quick. 1045. Yeesh.
What's the cap? Isn't it 1,000?
Well, I mean, like, buffs and stuff could pull you over, but building for the cap, I think Big Man Tings is pretty close to hitting it at that point.
He sure is, man. Big Man Tings connects with just about any bit of damage, and it's going to really hurt whoever he connects with. I'm surprised he hasn't elected to go for like a Polynomicon build. That really is kind of like the bread and butter of Scylla back in the day, but who needs it when you're just throwing out crushes as consistently as he has been? So, fall back, reset. The Camelot Kings in their classic win condition position have broken the base. Right side bird, sure, not the best Phoenix to have taken, but with only 30 seconds left on the Fire Giant, won't leave up much to risk. Go ahead, reset, grab a pyro, reset again, get some wards, reset again, put some wards in your pocket. You know, the Camelot Kings have got so much time to play with, where the only Warriors really can't get too proactive on the map. I think the next minute for the Camelot Kings should really be spent either fishing for picks or establishing vision dominance.
Good thing Variety has Poly, because we've been sitting there for a while watching a Hades auto attack a Scorpion. My favorite thing to watch is the Hades smacking a camp for next to nothing. But Camelot Kings will send 3 back to base. Actually, everybody aside from never mind. Everybody will now make their way back to base.
The Blood Soaked.
Fire Giant, 50 more seconds, but Blood Soak for Variety picked up now.
Yeah, a little bit more sustained, the ability to stick around in these team fights. I mean, it really does just fit super well with the standard lifesteal build that we've been seeing from Hades. Just keep you alive in every single one of these fights, but it only works once per ability. So that means that in Pillars of Agony, you're not getting the 1.5% every single tick. It's just the first one. Otherwise, you're still getting pretty decent value. I think it's more so about the stats on that item with Hades in particular. But I do not envy the Oni Warriors and the I suppose, necessity of dealing with Variety now. Maybe Ankh could have been an answer, but too late now.
Yeah, we're might be a little past that point.
Maybe Sunder.
You know, either could have done, but again, a little too far into the game at that point to try and pick one of those up. Neil Ma, spotted by Variety. Not a whole lot of damage from the Hades this time around. No real pen in the build, at least for Variety on this Hades. He'll go and clear out the wave. It's about the best that he can do to help out his team at this point and play distraction. Does have Poly, so puts some threat on the birds at the very least. Has actually
he brought the
gotten
boys.
The team here. Genetics taxi services the Kings. And that's it. He taxis the Kings into the lane, and then now they're going to have to walk their way back to Fire.
They know that Cuvo Fred is down here. They don't know exactly where he is, but the Camelot Kings are privy. There is a jungler deep.
Oh, no, he doesn't see.
Oh, Fred.
He is lucky.
How does Twig missed autos?
He is so lucky that Captain Twig missed the auto after the initial blink. Fear no evil will push Nico away, but what a series of events that we've witnessed at this rock.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even like reaction blink to blink from Captain Twig. That was blink from QO Fred after Twig had blinked, and I believe whiffs 2 auto attacks. Then the Fear No Evil on disengage. I mean, it'll come back up pretty quickly. He's got a lot of CDR, but
this is wild.
I don't think that one was entirely necessary. Maybe you don't have vision around the Fire Giant perfectly, so Twig doesn't know exactly how many members of the Oni Warriors around that corner. Just spots Nika and says, this is too risky.
Let's not leave it up to chance. Completely disengages. Well, the only Warriors now have got an opportunity. Captain Twig halfway back to that Fear No Evil to fight while it is down. But how do they force these engagements? A wall from Neilma, I suppose. But there are so many good answers from the Camelot Kings. It'd have to be a wall on a Yarkor. And I don't think Yarkor is going to be that far up, especially with his positioning on map as of now.
Full Deathbringer done by Yark. Death's Temper. And Fire Giant melting. Quarter HP, Fear No Evil. Nika goes in. Fire Giant secured by the Camelot Kings. BMT trying to get out. Crush does tick Dardes, and a triple stun by Vote is good to disengage for the Warriors, because it's about all they can do now in this fight is try and turn tail and run. BMT goes in. Crush zoning away Nehemiah. He does not want to walk through that damage. But unfortunately for him, he chose to stand and take the damage from the Kings.
Variety still moving forward. Could catch Nika in the jungle here, depending on his pathing. Does go towards mid, so Nika has made his way out of the heat here. Camelot Kings, 4 stacked on right with Captain Twig hovering just behind. Should be able to take out this bird pretty quick.
Yark being blocked by a couple of minions, but we'll take it down at the end of the day. Mid Phoenix, and I should say mid lane minions in general, pushed very far back. Enhanced Fire Giant will mitigate the necessity of the minions, especially in a 4v5. Genetics and Variety at the front line. Only Warriors down a man, but have the 6-man of the Phoenix. Variety stunned as soon as he goes in, losing a lot of HP, but the Book of the Dead comes in big to save the solo laner's life. Genetics will dash out. Variety still low, still gonna go down at the end. Vote credited for that kill. And the Oni Warriors have now pushed back the Kings, but they've still lost their bird in response.
Yeah, Variety could have leapt out there, but decides to stick around, tries to apply a little bit more damage, maybe considering the passive on that Blood Soaked as a valid avenue for regen. Wasn't quite able to find it, does fall down eventually, but as you said, mid Phoenix was in exchange. The Camelot Kings have officially broken the base cleanly from the Oni Warriors, and still with Enhanced Fire Giant on 4, should be able to keep up their aggression. 30 seconds on Variety's respawn. Camelot Kings can spend that time clearing out their own jungle and collecting some buffs. Green and speed still available. But the path to success from here is pretty clear for the Camelot Kings. Only one lane that's really worth pushing, and it's that left side. Only bird still standing between the Camelot Kings and the completely exposed base of the Oni Warriors. And this base defense, we've seen it a couple of times now, but it still is the same. It's all up to Vote to find a massive ultimate. Nika could separate with his ultimate, Dardes as well. But it's all about initiation. It's not slowly poking out. It's not taking this engagement slow and utilizing sustain. If the Oni Warriors want to win out, they've got to do it off the first bit of the fight. But the first bit of the fight is similarly the strength of the Camelot Kings. Fear No Evil, one of their best tools. I'm a Monster, Pillars of Agony, all in that exact same conversation. That's the nature of both of these compositions. Who swings harder and who swings first?
Variety actually now selling the Blood Soak, picking up a Mantle of Discord in its place.
He probably read it
Wanting
again,
a-
was like, oh, it's only once per ability.
Also probably went, oh, there's like no protections on this thing. Maybe get
Anymore,
something
yeah.
a little bit tankier. So goes for Mantle. See if that will work out for him this time under the Phoenix. Got a lot of value from that Book of the Dead though. Massive shield. Kept him alive during the entirety of that ultimate. Vote steps up with those enhanced ranged autos. Gets a little bit of damage back through, but at least for the Oni Warriors, doing their best. Neilma with this wall is the best deterrent. Variety goes in, finds a couple inside the ultimate, but BMT has already taken one off the map.
Yark.
But Yark has got in response. Ultimate off the mark by BMT this time around. Neilma finds a wall to lock in Captain Twig. And Genetics will use the ult to take 2 of his team away. The Warriors have defended their left Phoenix.
In this battle of who swings first and who swings harder, it's the Oni Warriors who get the jump. Nika, I think, comes up massive in that team fight, just completely isolating Yarkor. Not only the Camelot Kings' best way to deal with the bird, but also some of their most consistent damage output. Without him, nobody's really setting up for big man Tings to create these, one-shot, air quotes one-shot. It's like 80%. 80% crushes. And so, the Oni Warriors extend the game once more. Right side Phoenix about a minute away from respawning. Mid Phoenix about a minute and 15. Fire Giant exactly 1 minute. The Oni Warriors, it would take some tricky positioning on map, but I think they should be able to get to this Fire Giant, so long as they're capable of dealing with these enhanced minion waves. Vote has got the solo lane. He'll be able to deal with that one on his own. Mid, Nika seems to have that one locked down as well. Might just be back to an even game.
Variety will keep the minions pushed up in mid, at least for now. BMT goes back to base with 25 seconds left on Fire Giant. Respawn, at the very least. Right side Phoenix up, only 2 more minion waves there. Cubo Fred will deal with the 2 that are left in mid. Maybe 1 more will come out before that bird respawns in. That's keep Cubo Fred busy for just a little while longer. The Goni Warriors has done a good job extending this game just a little bit longer. Genetics wants to probably be careful walking up against 2 of the carries, though it doesn't seem too much damage came from Vote with that 1 auto.
Man, Genetics' game sense again there, just trying to poke out that ward from a distance. Realizes that there is threat of Dardes, just really dampening your HP before the engagement. Game senses out that stealth and doesn't get poked before the engagement. Love it from the support from the Camelot Kings. Getting a little bit of vision for his team without sacrificing too much.
Variety, and most of the Kings actually hovering on the left side. Genetics doesn't find the dash onto Nika, which could have gotten some good poke back. This is the final fire wave on the map, so no more threat of fire minions pushing in. Starting out the Fire Giant is the Camelot Kings. Nika goes in the back, finds
Got
Yarkor
Yark.
with the ultimate, throws into Cubo Fred, but not enough damage. It's Genetics who crashes in to give a shield to the team. I'm a
Yikes.
monster off the mark. Vote up against Variety. The Aegis will pop. Variety still harassing in the backline as a
Ooh.
Fear No Evil separates him from the fight. The wall keeps Cubo Fred out, but it also keeps Variety in. Fire is low. The Camelot Kings will get the fire, but how many can get out of the fight? Neo Mob tries to get in to stop them.
Need eyes on
Yarkor
Yark.
is
No
batting
dash.
away, but Big Man Tings is doing so much damage. Yarkor is sustaining through all of this. Takes down 1 in the fight, but it's Cubo Fred low and Cubo Fred gone. Big Man Tings with the double.
Yarkor finds too much value. Dardes jukes out with the stealth. Should be able to make his way to safety. Vote gonna need a little bit of help. Updraft from Genetics coming up very shortly. Just needs to apply that slow. Does find it. Captain Twig's got the gap closed. Fear No Evil to close this one out. And it's just Dardes still standing. The Camelot Kings trade 2 for Fire Giant and 4 on the Oni Warriors. And it's an enhanced Fire Giant at that. Ranged auto attacks only coming from Big Man Tings, but what can Dardes do on his own for 20 seconds?
Throws out Omen, misses. Decoy gone, still maintaining his bubble. Captain Twig will take away 1.
They're going for
No
it.
ult from Dardes. Up against 3. He's got to do a lot
Magi's
before that
up.
ult comes back through. Toko in, holding on to the stun. He wants Big Man Tings. Will find Big Man Tings with the damage, but I'm a Monster is there. Dardes cannot do enough. I'm a Monster misses onto BMT, and the Camelot Kings take game number 3.
I love the idea from Dardes there. Says, look, there are probably better transformations for disrupting this fight, but there is not a better transformation for me to kill 3 people on my own than confirming an I'm a Monster into a kill. He took one of the winning lines, maybe one of the only winning lines for him in that position. Unfortunately, comes up a bit empty, and the Camelot Kings able to close it out.
Just so slow throughout that early game. We go 10.
Which one, all 3?
Yes. Actually, yes. All slow throughout the entirety of this set. But again, it feels like this has become the answer to so many teams up against the Camelot Kings. Only team that's really not kind of playing to that hand is the Jade Dragons at this point, but everyone else starting to answer to it. Camelot Kings were falling behind in the macro early, but we know the Camelot Kings are definitely the late game team fighting supreme team. They're able to win out on this one. Camelot Kings take the set 2-1. That's it for me and Mifflin. We'll throw it over to Gore and Trelly on the desk.
Yeah, it's a fun game to watch towards the end there, Charlie. It gets incredibly exciting and back and forth. Unfortunately for the Warriors, all of that back and forth still amounts in the same result the Kings were looking for, a loss on the side of the Warriors. But a lot of bumps in the road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, if game 1 is like, hey, Kings take control, then they fumble a little bit, but then they get there. And game 2 is the opposite, just for the Warriors. Game 3, all of a sudden, it takes a little while, a little bit of build-up. And then who knows what happens. I mean, that was a wild, just wild amounts of back and forth there.
Yeah, I think back and forth was kind of how you would break that one down.
But it's only for like 10 minutes. It was only like a fourth of the game.
Yeah, that is true, but that's the point. When you get to late game like EFG territory, it doesn't matter what happened in the early. You just have to, and that was the thing. Variety was consistently getting blown up on this Hades, and I kept saying like, man, Variety just cannot live. And then randomly, he just got way tankier and goes into the fights, and his ult lasted for the entirety, the full duration of the Pillar of Agony. And I was like, what happened? I guess it was just the Spectral Armor. Like, that's all it really took to survive. And then after that, I think the team fights were so split. It was not a traditional 5v5. I think just it was whatever team wanted it more. And in this case, I guess the Camelot Kings went out.
Well, and it's good news for him, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you look at this grand scheme, you look at what this team I was gonna say has gone through. They made a single swap, right? But you're looking at this kind of change specifically so that you can push yourselves forward further for Worlds and for runs like that, right? You're looking at a team in the Kings that is going to be going to the playoffs.
Yep.
It was just the question of whether or not you are going to place highly at playoffs, if you're going to qualify immediately to Worlds in that top 4, things like that. That their change had to have been made with thoughts of, right? So it's going to be fun to see how well they continue to fare, because that's only one of a few matchups, but you don't have to take it from me or from Chelly. We've got Genetics standing by with JMac right now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Genetics support for the Camelot Kings. First off, congrats on your win up against the Oni Warriors. Now, for you just got a new teammate over into the duo lane. Talk to me kind of how at least your first competitive game up against with Yarkor on the squad now. Tell me how kind of that first game feels goes through.
No, Yarkor's a really good player. Honestly, his comms are fantastic. He's a funny guy as well, which helps. It's only early on, but I think I've got the strongest backline in the league. The last fight kind of proved it to me, where they were both just dashing in and putting their life on the line. So no, I'm buzzing.
Tell me what's kind of going through Variety's mind during that one engage. You push into the Fire Giant. Variety lives through it quite a bit. Ends up getting, I think, you got a Book of the Dead proc right at the end at the Phoenix, and then you dash in trying to save him, and then he still ends up dying after. Kind of tell me what was going through the comms during that fight.
Honestly, I have no idea what's going through that guy's head. No, I don't know. I can't remember the fight exactly, but I think there was a few like individually, but overall, I think he created quite a lot of space for us even in the last game. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and when you guys are going to like these full sets like this one, these games are going 35, 40 minutes almost every single time. What kind of mental tenacity does it take for a team to be able to keep constantly pushing? Because this seems to be a consistent for your team. Tell me what it's like for your team to have to keep constantly having to push into games like this.
Yeah, so it's always kind of annoying if you get an advantage and then you don't make use of it and you have to redo it over and over again. And the Fire Giant kind of resets the map and everyone's kind of just like fighting from both sides. But it's just looking for little advantages like either in vision or poke or in gods or relics, and eventually, like with most teams, when you find that little gap to pull Fire Giant, it really starts everything off, and it kind of goes crazy from there.
You guys are able to close it out. So, Genetics, congrats on your 2-1 win. I'll let you get back with the team. We'll throw it back over to the desk to keep it going.
Wise words coming from Genetics there, and again, the way I think things are going for them, specifically looking at how the duo lane has fared, hearing that they've got good synergy with each other, that they get along pretty well. Hardcore's a funny dude, which I guess we kind of already knew, but nice to just be reconfirmed every now and then.
Just in case you were curious, he is funny. We know.
Got good comps. Yeah. Look, as far as that goes, we've seen the mechanics. That's the trifecta for him. It feels like, and much as Genetics had said, maybe a couple of ints from moment to moment throughout the entire series. But definitely a lot of clean play towards the end as well.
That was the ult where I was like, wait, when did Variety get so tanky? Because he was 0-4 and then just goes to 1-4. He lived through the entirety of that ult. It was just the Spectral Armor, and he even had it the fight before. But I like the highlight of the fact that Yark actually dashed in this fight right here, decided to live through all of this. BMT had his back as well. He does unfortunately fall down, but with the amount of damage these carries were doing, you got to give credit, I'm glad Genetics did, to the fact that Variety made a ton of space. I mean, he was in the backline doing so much damage on this Hades with the mitigations, that sort of thing. And with that much space created, your carries really can free cast, and it looked like that was the call. Captain Twig, I think, much better performance than the Naja in the game before, and this is that changeup I was waiting for. It's hard to not get value out of the Hunbats, and I think when he was getting those ults off, also was creating that space.
Also, and this just needs to be said sometimes, but if Asilla on any team is going 7-0 and 8, that's usually a bad sign for whoever's having to deal with it. First off, undying for big man teams. which is remarkable given how like the length of the game, but also the fact that like Ursula, yeah, you've got some decent getaway, but I think impressive. But then being a part of 15 kills, matching the amount of assists Genetics had, plus putting up 30,000 damage has to feel really solid for what you were able to accomplish that game.
Yeah, but I unfortunately have some bad news, and it seems like the Morgan's still around because Dardes looked pretty clean on the Morgan.
Yeah.
I was hoping the nerfs would be enough to make sure she's gone, but Dardes made her look good still. Still had some decent one-shot potential as well as, you know, some pretty impactful ultimates when he was able to change into Captain Twig with the Fear No Evil and the Cubo Fred with the ultimates as well. So I think she's still around. Maybe not top pick, top band, but she's still around.
Look, all I'm saying is, and you had kind of joked about this at least halfway, but like Scylla maybe coming into the meta, the Morgan's still in the meta. I've seen around Worlds time, I've seen where this goes. So I've got great news for the Titans, right? Where things are coming up. Paul seems to pop off when these picks stand up on top. And the better news for Titans fans is that they're going to be playing here in just a little bit. We'll take a look again at how the day is going to continue shaking out. The 2-1 victory for the Scarabs over the Valkyries and a 2-1 victory over the Warriors here for the Kings. We're going to a match that still helps determine that 6th seed. Now, the Titans and the Bolts, an interesting one. The Titans confirmed in the top 6. The Bolts, if they win this set, eliminate the Valkyries from that contention, guarantee our top 6. The rest of the weekend will be for seeding, things like that. Meanwhile, the Titans have a potential chance to play upset for the Bolts and potentially give some hope over to the Valkyries, depending on how their set would then go against the Dragons tomorrow. And a friendly reminder, it's 11 a.m. today. Of course, you're already here, so that's going to be late if you're not there 6 hours ago, whenever that was. Then 11 a.m. on Sunday, but then, of course, the 1 p.m. start times there on Friday and Saturdays. We have the 2 matches on each of those days. It's an action-packed week, though, Trelly.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of it actually does hinge on this next match.
That's a good point. If in order to make sure that all of these standings here make sense, as you said, the Valkyries really want to try and kick the Bolts out of that number 6 spot and send them down to the bottom 2. And that all contingents here on making sure that the Bolts lose. So the Titans have a lot of weight in their hands, I suppose.
And again, a lot of the shifts that you'll see, I know 1 and 2 are locked. With that win, that might be all the Kings needed over the Warriors to make sure that they at least have that matchup. The Titans and the Kings definitely have maybe a little bit that they could fight over, depending on how the week goes. But for the Bolts right now, it's all about just staying in the top 6 and potentially winning this one to eliminate the Valkyries from that conversation from playoffs. And then we start talking about a whole different amount of things, right? If you're looking at the Phase 2 playoffs right now, if you're the Leviathans, you're the Dragons, you're super happy.
Yeah.
Why? Because you need to win 1 set and you get to go to Worlds. That is maybe the best case scenario for you. Everybody else, it's going to be a little more shaky. I believe you have to have 2 wins. It's going to be double elim, a very, very fun week. Of course, all of that still has to be found in what seed you're going to be. And for some of these teams, actually confirmed that you're going in about 2 weeks to those playoffs by finding a couple of wins. So we'll do that right after this quick break when the Bolts take on the Titans.